Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Holliston School Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:02. Can everyone see the consent agenda? Does anybody have any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
So we would be voting on both the October 13th and the 27th meeting under one. Can we just quickly open the meeting minutes? Because when I looked at them, I think they were both dated October 27th. So we just need to make one change to it.
It does say the 27th. And this one, let me check the other one. Did you put the same one twice?
No, I think the date might be.
I think it's just the date is wrong, so we
Okay.
need to figure out which minutes
All
are
right.
the 13th.
Let me know, I can change.
That one's the 27th, the other one's the 13th.
So A1 is the 13th and A2 is the 27th.
Yep.
So I can
as
just change the
amended.
date then?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Other than that, I think it's okay?
Okay. All in favor to,
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Seconded.
all in favor? Thank you. Okay, communications. Report from the students. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So the football team is in the state semifinals this Saturday at 2, and there will be a fan bus bringing students that was available to sign up for. Thanksgiving, we have our football game home against Westwood. This weekend, boys and girls cross country also has their states, and the girls are the first seed. The opening night of the play Pippin is tonight. Unified Basketball League Jamboree is today, and they're looking for new members to help next year, so anyone to sign up. It's not a huge commitment, and it's very rewarding. For Student Advisory Council, we had our Civics Day, where we bring in candidates to talk to students about voting. So even with 2 candidates dropping out 24 hours before due to personal issues, it was a success, and it's put on and run by Student Advisory Council. Its main purpose is to convince students that their vote does matter and how to have political conversations that are amiable. Our panelist guests were Judge David Kunis, Mr. Arena DeRosa, and Mr. Travis Ahern.
So next year for the Civics Day, we're hoping to improve it by having more questions and materials that students can learn from beforehand. And then we also want to include more interactive options during it. And then also National Honor Society has had a bunch of events lately. We had our senior dinner last night where we had over 64 senior citizens come and have a potluck style dinner which students made meals for. And then they watched the final dress rehearsal of the play after.
That's awesome.
And then tomorrow, 2 senior members have a leadership project where students are going down to Placentino and reading books to all the kindergarten through 2nd grade classes. And then also all the senior internships have started. Those have been great. And Best Buddies went on the Friendship Walk for the first time since 2018, which was really good in Boston. And then everyone's very excited for Pep Rally and Spirit Week.
I just have a quick question. The football game on Saturday, you said there's a bus to where? Where's the game?
Do you know
It's in Bridgewater, yeah.
Bridgewater?
But it's against
Duxbury.
Yeah.
So they
It's
put
a
it up.
neutral location.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for him?
Oh, no questions.
Okay. Is that it, ladies?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just wondering, actually, I should have asked, are either of you meeting for the kindergartens tomorrow?
I am.
Yeah, we both are.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to my kindergarten teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's your kindergarten teacher?
I had Mr. Almeida, but it was Mr. Criante, or Mrs. Criante my year, so she teaches 2nd grade now. But
That's
So cool.
yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so school committee individual comments. Stacy?
So I wanted to congratulate James Arena DeRosa, who is our new state rep and is actually, the state rep role is a partner of the school committee. And pre-COVID, we had a lot of more in-person times together with our state rep. So hopefully that will change now that we are post-COVID. So congratulations to him, and I'm looking forward to working with him on budget, et cetera, at the state level. I attended the Mass Association Conference for School Committees. Heavy discussions on diversity, inclusion, and equity. Lots of questions. Interestingly enough, at every session I went to, with maybe the exception of one or two, the presenters talked about the relationship between the school committee and the superintendent and central office administration and the partnership. And that was actually fascinating to me because I had never heard that, in all the years that I've gone. So it was really interesting. Commissioner Riley spoke. So not impressed with him. Very disappointed because his focus was on only, it appeared, he only talked about student achievement, and the way we should do that is by taking our best teachers and having them teach over February and April vacation these academies. And it was shocking to me. And then the very next morning, we had psychologists talk to us about how we need to ease up on the academics, and not ease up on it in terms of forget about the academics, but we need to get back to getting everybody to reconnect with one another and get through the mental health crisis. So it was such a dichotomy of information. So it was really disappointing to hear that from him. And I hope that, our voices can be heard, because I think that was really irresponsible and, unacceptable, quite honestly.
Wow.
Other than that, there were some interesting things. I sat through Acton, they had a new elementary school build, so learned about the building process. So that was a little bit interesting. We got some tidbits on things we should consider just in terms of RSOI. So that's really about it. I have not had time to write out notes from my notes, so those are sort of just little tidbits I thought I'd share. The other thing is Holliston will be celebrating its 300th anniversary in 2024. Mary Greendale is spearheading the history part of Holliston, the history of our 300 years. So she really wants to dive into the school family and how the schools have changed, how our programs have changed, how our families have changed. So anybody who's interested in sharing information about their history, even if you've only been here for 2 months, feel free to email me and I'll connect you with Mary, because she's trying to put together almost like a book. And so hopefully we'll be able to partner with her on different levels in terms of from teacher perspective, student perspective, administrators, but I'm happy to connect people with her. And that's all I got.
Great. Stacey, was he talking about these academies as things that are planned and happening, or was this a theoretical idea?
This is what you should do, suggestions.
So when he said that it's the February and April break, the teachers should teach who?
Students.
And so none of them get the break.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not kidding. Not kidding.
Audible groans.
Wow.
The students and the teacher and their role.
We're all going to Yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll consider that.
Yeah, it doesn't do that.
All right. Thank you, Stacey. Anyone else?
Maybe just a quick shout out that December 2nd and December 3rd, the Rams React, the Vol 1 acts will be put on at the middle school. And tonight through Saturday evening is Pippin here at the high school.
Great. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. I was not contacted by anyone to do any public comment, so we're just going to actually switch the agenda a little bit, and we're going to get the French exchange updates first, and then we'll get to your presentations, but yours are a little bit longer. We want them to be able to leave if they want to. Take it away. Thank you.
So I don't know, Nicole and Dominique, I actually worked with Cynthia and I in the budget, not the budget, the policy subcommittee. We're looking at a policy that you had shared with us from Milford Schools during policy sub. We did not go forward with the policy, but we did update a consent form and had our legal counsel review it. So I have that tonight. So I don't know if you want to look at that first, and then you'll be able to answer questions. You haven't seen it. I just got it from him today back. So I'll put that up on the screen. So this is a release from liability indemnity agreement that our legal counsel had vetted in other districts, but it was related specifically to overnight trips related to sports. So we went through it even though it was not a policy, because we were reviewing this policy potential in policy sub. We reviewed it and added to account for extracurricular activities as well as exchange programs that would cover us for all three, anything that's going out of state. So I don't know if you want me to read it. It's not a policy, it's just so it's up to you, but it was in the packet. But the one change that after we made the changes together the other day, our council had suggested that we did not have a place for extracurricular activity or exchange program. So if somebody's going away on exchange, they would fill that out here and sign off to give consent that they would not hold us legally responsible for things that might happen that we have no control over.
So they just are going to specify what programs they
Yes,
decide.
right. So because they might end up using this more than once through the year.
Yeah.
So if they were only doing this for exchange and then another thing comes up for athletics, they'd have to fill it out again. But it would.
And we do this for field trips all the time.
Mhm.
So it's just,
So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but and I'll share it with you, Nicole, as well, and Dominique, so you'll have it.
the only other thing was our other copy had Holliston Public Schools instead of Holliston School District. So he probably took his old one and then he
all right,
just
so you know
put
what I'll
this
do?
in.
I'll combine them back, and we
Yeah.
have made some
We
changes.
had made a few changes,
Yep.
so.
So I'll just take the lines below and put it on the
Yeah.
one that I sent him back. All right?
Would you consider where it says successors, departments, officers, employees, servants, and agents, including volunteers, including the word volunteers? And on the second line where it says consent to his or her participation, do we want to do his, her, their?
It said there in our copy,
It
but
did?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had adjusted
We
already.
had
so
changed, this is Andy's
I just
copy.
realized what he did. I sent him the one that we edited,
Right.
and then he sent me back, I think, the old one, and I didn't catch that.
That he edited, yeah. Because he had,
So
he has father and mother up at the top, and I was saying that should say parents, not
So
father.
I
and
will
mother.
share the one that we edited out when I get a chance, and just add those 2 lines to ours. And then,
Yeah, adding the word volunteer is a good idea.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Adding volunteer.
volunteer, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion that you say parent/guardian?
Yes, that's what our
I think we had
original
already done
said.
that, that's why.
This is Andy's
We always
copy, I
say
just saw
there,
today.
and I always say parent
Yeah.
guardian.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look at I'll send both of them and we'll get it straightened out. But if there's a change that needs to be made prior to that, we'll accept feedback on that. You can just email me directly. And
I
then,
have 2 other things on.
okay, I'll send you the one that you should have seen tonight, and then let me know if there's something else, all right?
Thank you.
All right.
So we're happy to be here tonight to give an update on the success so far, because our French students, or our students from France have arrived and gone back to France. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit on the success of it and what it's been like.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if you touched the buzz or not, but they were in the classroom, they were football games, they basically were everywhere in the community. So it's been a great experience. We got a lot of positive feedback, not only from family but also from staff. It was kind of a sad ending because everybody was crying and everybody was sad to go back home, but it was such a positive experience for us, and thank goodness everything went smoothly. This was our first time, so there were a few things that we learned along the way as well. I would say that for our first time, it went pretty well.
Yeah, I'd say one of the fun events that I was able to attend at the beginning was the welcome dinner for all families, and it was really fun to see the students starting to mingle together. And it had only been maybe 3 or 4 days that our French students had been here, but the students were already really bonded, and then having all the families there was really nice because the families could kind of share their experiences, and then to have a similar dinner towards the end was really nice as well. The parents did and guardians did a phenomenal job. They really opened their homes up. They welcomed everyone. They are even more excited now to have their own students go to France, especially where relationships have been established. So it's just been a really wonderful experience. And I was pleasantly surprised how quickly the students really acclimated to our school and really were part of the Holliston community. It was really nice to see.
Yes, also teachers knew them by names, which I was really surprised. So it didn't take long for our community to really embrace them. And also how the parents in the community really also embraced them and went above and beyond with a lot of things they did with them. You know, we provided a few things. We went to Boston and we had a scavenger hunt with them, but parents took them all over the place, which was great. So it's as much an experience for the kids, but also for their families as well. And they've been in touch with families overseas as well. So they have that connection going, and it's been pretty strong. And it's been neat to see. So I'm glad it's happening, and thank you for your support.
How long did this take?
1 month.
1 month?
And how many kids?
22.
Wow.
Were they expected to attend to school every day?
Yep, same schedule as everybody else. They were shadowing us too.
So is there a connection between the students and the families who hosted these exchange students and those who are potentially going?
It's the same family.
Is it the same?
Yep.
So like, if
So they already have the connection.
That's cool. So they'll be with the same like
Yep.
sibling.
Exactly.
So cool.
Will you be surveying both the French the families from France and our students in terms of what went well here, and will you survey them again? I've heard nothing but good, like not even just good. The host families gave these kids such an experience. It really was exciting to see from a distance. We were happy to be friends with some of these host families. But I would love to hear if they have feedback. You know what worked well for them, what didn't work well for them. They had some amazing weekend weather while they were here. I mean, they really. It was.
Yeah, everything went well.
Yeah.
We did get a sample of a survey that the family were thinking of doing, and I think we'll combine it with our own survey.
Yeah.
And then we'll go through that. We'll give you the data on it.
This is super cool.
What was the vetting process of deciding who would come here and who we're sending there?
So that's a good question, actually.
And the families too, actually.
Because we were working with a region, not just with one school. So on the other side, they kind of narrowed it down to 2 schools for us. Because most of our families wanted to have at least one person that they were familiar with being with them. And at the end, a lot of students wanted to be in the same building as the other one. So it really narrowed down how we could function and trying to pair. So we could have been a little more precise on the matching if we were open to the other high school, but because we're working with 2 schools, we had issues around the matching people who wanted a certain gender, and that was challenging at times because sometimes we could not really do that. We tried to match them by interest. We had a profile for the French student, but we also had a profile for our own students, so we tried to match them that way. Their interest, what they were taking at school, the kinds of sports or activities they were doing, and for the most part, we did well. There were 2 or 3 where it got a little more challenging because there was some miscommunication on some things, but the goal was trying to get each student to have some sort of a connection with each other, whatever that might be. So we were not the only one in that process. It was me and Ms. Arkenbaugh, and on the other side, we had 2 or 3 other people who represent the region who were going through that process as well with us. It took us a good 2 hours to do that. So, and we had done some filtering before we even sat down, so. Yes.
So when you choose the kids who would go to France, what would be the vetting process for us?
They already are chosen. They're the same students.
Right, like, do we have a process that the kids go through? Like, what would be the process? So say next year, if a child wants to
It
sign
would be
up.
the same process where students apply, and then we try to find them a match. And then the parents have to accept that match too. They don't have to, they don't have to go through the process. They don't want to.
Okay.
So there's flexibility there.
So is it a question of having enough host families, or so like what happens next year if you get 100 people that apply?
Yeah, and then
Like, how do you?
I think
that's
that
what he's
we
asking,
have
is how
about
you pick-
400
right.
students on the other side. We'd love to come here. So it's not the issue. It's more about trying to match students, but also the fact that most students want to be in the same schools. So it challenges. It's more of a challenge that way, where we have less of a choice because the pool is a little smaller, knowing that these are the schools that we're working with. One school is an international school, so they're really used to that kind of process. The other one was also a very strong school, just a little side of Grenoble. So those were the two schools that were picked for us as the best match for our building. And I thought they did a great job, really. The kids that came here were fantastic. I only have good things to say about them. I don't think we had any issues with them. They were very polite, respectful, and they were so thankful to be here. So.
This might be a stupid question, but if it's an international school, could we be getting some kids that are not French?
No, that was not the case. We only took French students.
No, I just mean that
We
I'm
have
not
the
against
choice.
it. I just didn't know.
No,
If,
we
they
have the
obviously
choice.
speak
We did
French.
have one student who came from Italy originally, but he was also fluent in French.
Okay.
So yes.
So it wasn't a stupid question. He wasn't.
Questions.
No, but
Absolutely not.
for them, we do want to. This is a French exchange, so we're trying to kind of match them with the proper people. So,
Yeah.
no, and I don't think we had one candidate that actually was not a French citizen. So.
Is there an itinerary for our students that are going there? I know that where they're going, the French students have 2 weeks off during that
Yeah.
time.
And that's going to be responsibility of the families they're with. So they're going to be in the school. As far as the itinerary, they're going to arrive at the airport. The parents are going to pick them up. And then they're going to do the same thing as what they did here. They're going to shadow their exchange student partner through their class day. And during vacation, they will be going on vacation with their parents, or they'll be doing this and that, just the same way it happened here. So there's no anything being organized outside of that. The parents on both sides are responsible for each child, and that's the way the exchange program functions. The school does not provide any kind of structure or special treatment for those students, except that they're going to be in school.
And how do we handle how did they handle the students from France? How did they manage the work that they were missing or the classes they were missing?
Yep.
So how, same for us.
So they had some, they didn't have, it's going to be a little different because they had some stuff to do, but it was mostly reading. They had opportunities to be in the classroom, but they could also work on their own stuff if they wanted to. They didn't have to necessarily participate all the time in the classroom while they were here. They also had time where, downtime where they could be at a high table or in a classroom doing their work if they wanted to. I had students in my classroom, they participated, but sometimes they'd be reading something that they needed to do for another class. So, and that's going to be the same over there. Whatever time they need, that other school will accommodate that. So either they'll get pulled out of that classroom and they'll be able to work on their own stuff or manage that. They're going to have 2 weeks off, so they're going to be on vacation, quote unquote, but also going to have time to do whatever they need to do while they're there.
Do you plan to do any, for lack of a better term, training for our teachers in terms of, so you may have students who are going to France for a couple of weeks and, here are the expectations to set. I think there's just still some concern, that's the one, sort of piece that's hanging over people's heads, I'm so excited for my student, but I'm really concerned because he or she's in honors whatever, and I'm really concerned that they're going to miss out and really have a hard time catching up. So I think that's just one sort of...
Yeah, I think that was one item that was Go ahead.
that we had gone over. So we had met with the faculty. We had talked to them at a faculty meeting earlier in the year. I say that like it's already well into the year, but feels like it. So earlier in the year, we had talked to the faculty, so they were all aware that the French students were arriving. They were aware that a number of our students were going to be going as well. All of our school counselors are very aware of the program, very aware that students are going to be over there, and have already been meeting as a counseling department to discuss how to best support students. They are going over in April, which was purposely chosen for a couple of reasons. They're not missing any of the sort of state-mandated tests in terms of MCAS. They're not missing AP exams, and so there is a window of time where they're going to be over. That being said, it does overlap from term 3 to term 4, and so the students are aware of the work that they need to do. One of the benefits of the pandemic is that it really shifted the entire school online. And so prior to the pandemic, all of our teachers weren't necessarily utilizing Google Classroom. The pandemic did shift that. It kind of accelerated, our everyone getting on the same page with that. And so right now, for our students who are in school on a daily basis, that's where the lessons are being posted, the assignments, and so forth. So with our students overseas, they're still going to have access to the Google Classroom. They're still going to be able to submit their assignments in the same way that they always have. So in that respect, we're not concerned about them missing a huge chunk of time. I think that the experience that the students are getting is going over to France is so incredibly valuable, and the teachers here really want to support that. And so there's some thought around, if it's right at the end of the term, some of those days are kind of reviewing and winding down prior to the term ending. And so how can we support students, and what are those projects maybe that they might want to submit ahead of time? What are they going to be working on over there? But the school's been incredibly supportive. And the counselors are really adept at working with students to make sure that they're all set.
And I'm sure, I hope you guys are preferring, and the department heads too, like support for the teachers as far as how to set up those ahead of time. Like, here's 4 weeks of work ahead of time, and by the way, you're missing 3 quizzes and 3 tests. Is there support for teachers instead of just saying, make sure you give all the exchange students all their work?
So
it seems like a lot to ask for the teachers, is all I'm saying, from a teacher perspective.
So because it's crossing over term 3 and term 4, it may not necessarily be the same classes. For some of our students it is. If they're in a semester-long class, for others it's different classes. We're also crossing over April vacation here, so it's 3 weeks here instead of 4 weeks in terms of school days. I don't necessarily envision all of the teachers putting 4 weeks of lessons online ahead of time. I think that because they are posting on a daily basis like they are with students here, that it's accessible for students, they can continue to stay with the work. In the conversations we've had so far with the teachers here and with the counselors, there haven't been big concerns that have been brought forward to us, and of course, we'll support anybody in the time that they need for that.
Is the school, so the equity point of view, is the school supporting in any way with the visa issues of any student, if there may arise?
I don't believe any issues have come up, to my knowledge anyway. No issues have come up for any of our families. I don't.
I also think that that's the parents' responsibility. They're going to be signing that document that you're seeing on the screen. So parents have to purchase their tickets. They have to make sure that their kids have a passport that's up to date. I don't think the school has to be involved in that.
So typically when the exchange programs like this happen, schools give supportive documents that the kid is going there for this reason.
We do have that already. That was already created when the exchange started. I believe that a set of copies have been given to Mr. Baudet. So the central office has those documents, and they were signed by both schools and for each family on each side.
Okay, thank you.
And the students were carrying them, and when they went through custom, they were able to show that to custom as well.
Thank you. This would be very helpful for the community to know actually what would the process be, especially for families who are on immigrant visa.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about chaperones when you'd first presented this last year. And let me just with a caveat that I'm very excited that we're doing a French exchange program, and this is great that we're piloting this, and I'm really supportive. I just have some reservations around the chaperoning, and I really appreciate that you're kind of trying to meet my concerns kind of that halfway with saying people are going to be going over with our students and staying for a few days, and then there'll be people to retrieve them. I wonder whether there's still anyone that's either within or without the community that could be going with our students to stay with them while they're there.
Well, this is a question that's kind of blocking things from moving forward right now. Parents in the community are trying to get their tickets, and without knowing what's the dynamic with or without a chaperone, they can't do anything. So I'm glad you bring that up. I'm not sure where you are right now when it comes to what you would see as being reasonable. I think we personally will go with whatever you recommend. And there's the cost involved of who's going to carry that cost,
Right.
which is another conversation that needs to happen.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up. It's,
Yes.
it's not just that needs the rest of us.
And I hear you, and I think we want to, this is the first year we're doing it, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of unknowns,
And I want it to be right. You know what I mean? Like I
Yep.
want them to be successful.
And typically the first year of any program, there are pieces that you just don't know until you get into it, and you learn along the way. And when the French students arrived here, their schools did not send somebody here. It was what they view as a true exchange program, where the student comes, they stay with a host family, they're here for the month, and then they return. Our families here organized as I said, the dinner, the welcome dinner, the goodbye dinner. They organized a number of trips along the way, and that was the parents and the families getting together to do that. On the French side, those families are also looking to do something similar, and so they're not expecting a chaperone. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be or that there can't be. They're not expecting somebody to go. They're expecting students to arrive. And I may be totally wrong on this, so I'm saying this live on camera, but so correct me if I'm misremembering. It's new to us as far as our first year, but this isn't new to
one school.
Okay. So they have some more experience with it as well. So I think some of the questions.
Actually, both schools have done it, but not with the U.S. Like one school has done it with other countries in Europe, and one school has done it in Canada and the U.S. before. So they both used to this kind of things.
So I think when we were initially having phone calls with them, they were helpful in answering some of our questions. Just because it's our first time doing it.
Right.
I don't know if a chaperone went for the month. I'm not sure what they would be doing, and so that's I think initially why we didn't have a chaperone going, because for us it's not a school trip. It's it's an exchange program, and so if we send somebody to get the kids settled and then on the return to bring them back, I'm not sure if a chaperone was there for the 4 weeks. I'm not sure what they would be doing during that time, where the families are hosting and moving around
And it's two different schools, correct?
Yep.
Is it possible to have like a point person in case of an emergency for each of those schools? So a person our students could contact if there's a medical emergency that's within that school or within the family group, someone that would be. So you do have
Two people
that.
from the French government already are doing that job.
Okay, so that is kind of like a chaperone in that if there was a medical emergency or someone, these students know.
Yep, those
Have
students
an
will
adult.
have that person's cell phone.
Okay.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
So
That's I think what we are.
That's what we were really asking about. Yes.
I think we mentioned that before, when we presented the first time, but there was so much going at you.
No, I appreciate the clarity on it. And then here, is there someone here they could reach out to that we're going to provide them with a phone or contact information that if a problem arises and it's just there's an issue with the family or an issue with the school or something they need to reach out to Holliston High School, who would they approach?
So it would be Ms. Archimo, one of our assistant principals. She has been along on this journey and also has better language skills than I do when it comes to French, but she has been really helpful. We did have without violating any confidentiality, we had a student who had a medical situation when they were here, and Ms. Archibald was wonderful in really communicating back and forth with the family and trying to make sure that we knew what the family in France wanted in terms of the care for the student and make sure that the student felt supported, and thankfully we got through that pretty quickly, and student was able to stay and all of that. But Ms. Archibald has been really instrumental from the beginning, and so she's the point of contact if there are any concerns or issues.
Do they have a point of contact at the schools that they're, I mean, it's one, I understand they have somebody from the government, but do they have somebody that's at their school?
Yes, they do as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've had to contact the family too during that stay, and then we did that. Ms. Ackerman was with me when I did it. It was fine. We emailed them, said we were going to call you at this time, and we were able to connect right from the school. So. The other thing about the chaperone is because they're going to two different schools, is that we can't split the chaperone in half. The other thing also is when they're buying tickets, there's no guarantee that everybody's going to be on the same plane at this time. So I'm not sure where we're going when it comes to that.
It's a good question.
Is there a grade that they need to be in to go on this? I'm sorry if you've already said that, I don't remember.
A grade?
Like a grade, like what grade are they?
Oh, anybody in high school can go. So
I'm wondering because there's a big difference between a 17 or 18-year-old senior or a 14, 15.
They're mostly juniors.
Okay.
But we have some sophomore, well, a handful of sophomores, yeah, and a few seniors as well.
Anything else?
I'm just wondering if you need to have any additions to fill out the field trip forms. Do we have to have school committees sign off on that, I believe, just officially? We did vote barring any more updates, so if you could just maybe add any of the things that we talked about as well as the consent form, and we'll get Catherine to sign off on that.
Okay.
So I guess for us, just because we have a lot of really excited families, which is wonderful, they're asking us pretty frequently, can they move forward in purchasing their plane tickets? And they knew we were coming tonight to give an update. So I guess I'm just looking for a little clarity on are we able to move forward? Can we have families starting to purchase their tickets? And I think we would need to know then where we're going to be in terms of a chaperone, because we need to be purchasing those tickets at the same time.
Given the new information, do you feel there's a need for a person to fly over, I guess is what we're asking?
I don't, because what I'm hearing is that we have a liaison there, a chaperone there, and to his point, it doesn't make a lot of sense if we have two different schools, and what are they going to do that whole time? And it seems like we were able, we even saw we saw a medical emergency when the French students came here. We were able to work through that and with the contacts that we have. So I feel confident we have someone here that's reachable, and we have de facto chaperones there, right? I don't think that it would be difficult to force all of these families to travel together with one chaperone, and then for what? They're not going to be in the same school. We will have adults that can assist students if needed.
So do you feel that, I'm wondering, since we have the consent form, maybe a revote with the additional information and the new consent form that would have to be provided to parents and signed as well? Does that make sense?
So you want a motion to approve the consent form and give
in
the
addition-
families
Yeah, I just think that
to
would be
go?
helpful, then the parents would know that it's official.
Okay, then.
Can I just ask you were still going to amend the consent form?
Yes, I just shared it with you, so
Okay.
if there's any other slight additions, if you could just email me before, and then I'll get it back to Nicole and Dominique.
But really, the amendments were more
They were not-
grammatical. They were not,
non-substantive, I don't
right,
think.
so.
Right, the content itself was already approved by our
Attorney.
It was just, I did put Holliston Public Schools everywhere and added the 2 lines, so.
Then I would happily make a motion to approve the consent form as amended and move forward with the French Exchange Program 2023.
Second. Moved by Stacy, seconded by Minnie. All in favor?
Bon voyage. Yay.
We're really excited, and we really appreciate the support. It's huge for the kids, so thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, thank you very much for all your work.
The thanks are over here for the hard work over the last year and a half. so.
15-minute effort.
Thank you. Good job, Captain.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready? All right, so welcome to our curriculum coordinators. Any order that your heart desires.
No, I am thrilled to be able to introduce them all tonight. This is a very dynamic team that has gotten along really well with the staff, and I'm excited that all three of them that are in this role. We have Ida Pappas, Pre-K through 12 plus, Unified Arts Curriculum Coordinator, James Lavasser, Pre-K through 12 plus STEM Curriculum Coordinator, and Joe Hicks, Pre-K through 12 plus Humanities Curriculum Coordinator. So take it away, team.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here. My name's Ida Pappas, and this is my,
Is that the right?
yeah, we're missing a picture.
Picture's not there.
Yeah,
Oh, you know what? Probably because it's in Google. Let me see if I can cue it up.
that's all right. I'll talk while she futzes with it. This is actually my 30th year in education, which still kind of shocks me. I have been fortunate enough to have a huge variety of experiences. I've taught pre-K and middle school and high school, then elementary, then back to middle school, and then, so in the last couple years I've been teaching graduate students in college. I'm actually from Pittsburgh, where Duquesne University is. And when I moved here with my husband, I attended Boston University. And just recently, I graduated from Lesley University with a PhD in education, with my focus is interdisciplinary studies. I've been fortunate enough to be all kinds of different types of leaders in school. I've been a K-12 arts coordinator for years in a variety of districts. And then I was fortunate enough to be a program director for STEAM Lab at Lesley University. And I feel like I had such a wide variety of experiences there that really helped me pinpoint that this is the kind of job that I'm really meant to have. In that position, I was able to coordinate. I had a whole lab of students that I would manage, and we'd create curriculum that sent them all over Cambridge doing urban STEAM education. But I also had to coordinate with college professors who were doing research with their students in my lab. I was also able to do some training with youth organizations and directors, et cetera, there. And then we went to a bunch of public schools and did some trainings as well. Through a grant through Lesley, we were able actually to help establish maker spaces in different schools and then go and train teachers. I was able, through a grant, to facilitate some curriculum writing in a variety of schools too. Anything from climate change, which was new to me, to writing wellness curriculum, to a science garden curriculum, a bunch of different, I think even a food curriculum during the pandemic, sending food to families, and through Zoom teaching kids how to cook it, which was fascinating to develop. I actually live right down the street. It's a beautiful commute. Can I tell you how pleased I am about that? I've been there for 24 years. My husband actually is a professor at Berklee College of Music, and these are my two daughters. One just graduated from Vassar. The other one is unbelievably a junior at Mass Art. And that's one of my stained glass windows. That's what I do if I'm not here, and yeah, that's a passion of mine. So.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Hicks. It's my 20th year this year in education, slightly less than Ida, which is shocking to me. I still feel young. I graduated from Rolling Cross with a BA in history, and I got my Master of Arts in Teaching from Quinnipiac University. And while enrolled there, I had the opportunity to start at New Haven Academy and was a founding faculty member at that high school, which was a great experience to really think about what it means to create a school and to be able to make all those choices about what a school can look like. I thought after that I would never do it again, but then I did in Lawrence, and I was a founding member of the 9th grade academy at Lawrence High School, which was a very rewarding experience. I've been a team leader, a history teacher, a team leader, an instructional coach in Salem for 2 years for the social studies departments, and an assistant principal in Lawrence. And I'm so happy to be here to be able to do this work. I don't have a nice commute like Ida. I live in North Andover, where I'm also a member of my own local school committee and a co-founder of the local organization, the North Andover Pride Project. And what makes me really excited about being in this role is really around the opportunity to do great work in literacy. My own son, me and my husband have twin 10-year-olds. They're in 5th grade. And my own son is a struggling reader. He's a student with an IEP. He has ADHD-C, which is inattentive and hyperactive, but he's also dyslexic. So literacy and making sure that students have an opportunity to learn to read in 3rd grade is incredibly personal to me, because I've seen the wonders that structured literacy can do for my own son and make him fall in love with being able to read and to really allow his other attributes and his other wonderful qualities to shine. And then I'm also particularly worried about my own daughter, making sure she can see herself as a strong math and science student as well. My husband is a scientist by trade, and I want to make sure that she can see herself in those roles. So it's really important that I celebrate that for her. Yeah, but they're the reasons why I do the work that I do. James.
My name's James Lavasser. I grew up in Holliston. I graduated from Holliston Public Schools. I still have, actually, my parents still live in town. My brother actually bought a house and moved to Holliston. So I have a lot of connection to the community. I earned my bachelor's degree in Eckerd College, and then I went and got an online degree at WGU for education. And then I got my CAGS degree in educational leadership from Fitchburg State University. I started my teaching career. I actually moved to Japan for a year, taught English in Japan, and that's how I really found out I liked and enjoyed education. I taught science and technology and developed curriculum for 20 years here at Holliston High School, and I currently live in Medway, right down the street, just like Ida, but the other way, with my wife and 3 boys. The youngest, Jackson, there's in 2nd grade, Parker, the middle, in 7th grade, and Connor's in 9th grade, freshman at high school. And that's my wife, Beth.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we're here to describe our roles and kind of tell you what we've been working on and what our goals are for the year. One of our roles is running these curriculum reviews. So every few years we review the curriculum and find out where the holes are and for each subject. So last time social study was done was 2009, so it's been a long time. Visual and performing arts also hasn't been completed since 2009. So these obviously are outdated. World language was last completed in 2011, math 2013. We're actually working on math, starting math this year. ELA 2014, we're starting ELA this year as well. Science was done in 2016, and wellness was completed during the pandemic, and so this year we're reviewing the data that we have collected from the curriculum review and wellness. DESE did a tiered focus monitoring of our school, and their recommendation was we need to do more frequent curriculum reviews at Holliston. So that's one of the reasons we're doing them. It also is part of the strategic plan to look at curriculum and review it. So there's 2 documents here. The first document, we took previous curriculum reviews and looked at the process. We took feedback from the Curriculum Council that worked on it last year and updated the process to include the DESE Curriculum Support Guide. So if you click on that first document, I'm going to very briefly go through this.
It's not letting me open it because it's in a PDF form.
Okay.
Hang on now, when I
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
So the one above it. The one above it first. So there's 2 documents there. The first one is the curriculum review process that we used the previous process and input from the Curriculum Council. We created this document right here, and if you scroll down a little bit, you can see a lot of this stuff should be familiar from the strategic plan. So the mission, the vision, the core values. There's 3, if you scroll down a little bit further, there's 3 different stages that we're going to, or phases that we're going to go through. These 3 phases, the first one is to, if you scroll down a little bit further, it's going to summarize each phase. The first phase, establish a vision of instruction aligned both vertically and horizontally to the strategic plan and mass state curriculum standards, and collaboratively develop protocol for reviewing and selecting curriculum materials. Stakeholders, including teachers, are essential to the process. Key actions in the phase include creating a timeline, collecting all the curricular materials that we currently have. So I'm in the process in math of actually meeting with teachers, and we'll talk a little bit about the committee I have working on this in a minute, collecting all that curricular material so we can then look through it and see where gaps are and where we need to amend or add material. And then right now we're working on creating a district vision of standards-based, rigorous content curriculum. And then we're going to utilize that other document that, Susan, you just opened, Curriculum Support Guide, which is released by DESE. We're going to use all that to identify district needs and make a recommendation to the superintendent for any changes to the curriculum going forward. This is the other document. This is a DESE document that's on the DESE website.
So those are linked in, and you should have access to those.
Yep.
You just can't be in presentation mode.
Now we know.
And this work is aligned with ARCH 3, Strategic Initiative 1, examining and addressing curriculum needs, PK through 12+, vertical and state alignment, bias, equity, inclusivity, and diversity of all curricula, utilizing equity audit data to further augment, and then Strategic Initiative number 1, create and implement a review and revision process for all curricular content. So this is the cycle that we're using that was also approved by the superintendent here. 2022, we're starting math currently, ELA in the secondary schools, and then wellness, we're going to review the recommendations that were made in 2020. In 2023, we're going to start a science review. These are going to overlap. If you saw the other dates, they take several years to complete. So they will overlap, but we'll be starting science next year. We'll be starting social studies next year, world language, and ELA in the primary schools. We split ELA because I think there's going to be a lot of changes in math at the younger grades, and I think it would be too overwhelming for those teachers to be changing both at the same time where they teach both. So, and then in 2024, we're going to do computer science and digital literacy, and then fine and performing arts. So just a quick summary on each of the curriculum reviews. I'll talk about math, and I'll talk about the other 2 that are starting. The math curriculum review, the first meeting was a couple weeks ago on the 9th, actually a week ago. The current committee members, myself, the curriculum coordinator of math, Joni, the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, Placentino, Nicole Lovely, Lindsay St. Aubin, Meg Nolan, Adrian Beaver, Kristen Marino, at Miller, Dave Keim, Carrie Perpal, Colleen Barnett, Christy Phipps, at Rams, Jesse Conant, who's the assistant principal, Jen Dayton, and Deborah Mailing, and at the high school, Karen Archambault. Those are all the people that have volunteered. We really tried to get a wide variety of people, so we wanted someone in French immersion, we wanted someone in Montessori, we wanted someone from each grade level, so whatever changes that are made is their decision based on the core values that we identify. Right now, we're in the process of identifying that vision of what math teaching looks like in Holliston. So I'm expecting that to take a few months to really hammer that, nail that down, and find out what it really looks like in the classroom. Good teaching that's aligned with standards. So we've identified a bunch of points, and we're going to put together a statement or a couple of statements that are going to really, again, nail that down. Holliston, and we're going to obviously use that to make recommendations to the superintendent, who will approve those, hopefully.
So as James said, we're doing starting with secondary ELA this year, recognizing that our elementary teachers can only do so much at one time, and we want to make sure that whatever they do really, really well. So we're starting with just the 6th to 12th grade this year. So our committee is smaller, so it's me, curriculum coordinator, and Joni Menard, our assistant superintendent, and then we have representatives from both the middle school and the high school, David Jordan, Casey Cunningham, and Kim Clifton from the middle school, and Don Quinley, Becky McLean, and Jamie Murphy have all volunteered from the high school. Also, we're in the process of establishing a vision. We met one time last week to start talking about what our values are about around ELA and why it's important, and why that subject matter, that subject content area matters, and why what we want our kids to know and be able to do by the time they leave us here in Holliston. And that's going to be aligned to the mission, the vision of a graduate, and to our strategic plan. Make sure that everything makes sense with each other. And along with that, when I was getting to know the schools early in the school year, talking with the literacy specialists at Placentino and Miller, Jenny Mann and Ilsa O'Brien, and then with Don and Casey Conhan at the high school and middle school, one of the needs that's sort of arising at the same time is taking a good look at our writing instruction across the district and what that looks like and what we want writing instruction to look like. So I've also gathered a smaller group of individuals to look at that and to align our vision of writing and to start to develop some district-wide expectations around what writing can look like and how we define good writing. We're starting with establishing those clear expectations and developing potentially a district-wide rubric coming out of Casey Conahan's really great work at the middle school, mostly right now around explanatory and informative writing, but that can grow into other genres as well.
So the wellness curriculum review, this is actually the debrief because it had already started. Dr. Sarah Bennis from Lighthouse Wellness Health and Education Consulting actually helped to perform that curriculum review. And it straddled the pandemic, so it lost a little steam somewhere in there as we all scrambled to sort of go online and figure out how we teach. So this is really just the end of that entire process. We had our first meeting in October, and we had Joni was there, and I was there, and Jen Moreau was representing the high school. Alan DeAngelis was Rams representative, and Aaron Squires was the elementary representative. So Dr. Bennis basically had sent forward some recommendations, and what we did at this meeting was basically sort of send it through a filter to try and figure out how it aligns with our strategic plan, the recommendations that were given, and what were some of the constraints that we could see. We talked about next steps and possible timelines and key people, and what a criteria for success would be. So a couple of the recommendations, one of them was to develop an SEL coordinator, which we did. So we were way ahead of that. And they also suggested a wellness coordinator. So those two things have already happened. They also suggested a couple updates to the equipment. There was an upgrade to the weight room. I know that there were some risers that were replaced. And they also suggested some specific wellness professional development, which we are looking at. There are some things that are opening up in the spring that we're still looking at to figure out how we can rotate teachers through to go to some of that. But more importantly, we decided that we need a little more data on schedules and teaching assignments. So each of the teachers was asked to sort of come back with a little bit more information before our next meeting. So that's where we are right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Was there any recommendation in terms of policy from wellness? Because we were looking at updating. We've been in process of and I didn't know whether there was anything policy-wise or maybe we should be checking.
No, Landon from Safe and Supportive Schools has made recommendations.
Okay.
So,
Great.
So the next wellness meeting, we can maybe bring that
Yeah,
up.
we can definitely bring that up. Yeah, mostly it was nuts and bolts, pretty much like that. A lot of the things that we haven't already addressed really had to do with schedules and teaching assignments. All right, so on our first days here on campus, James, Joe, and I, we had these long discussions about why we need curriculum alignment across the district. And it was actually a very fruitful conversation because it is the foundation of everything that we're doing, like every single day. And so these are just some of the things that we came up with as to why it's absolutely essential. First and foremost is that it actually supports every one of the arches in our strategic plan. It is important for us to communicate and make visible to the public, what we do here in school. It's one of the ways that we can help articulate everything that's happening. It helps us support the needs of students. It identifies our strengths, but also our challenges. It also helps us sort of align ourselves and make sure that we're covering the state standards and to review that regularly. Ensures students are actually using their knowledge we use this term transfer, and that basically means that they're using it in innovative ways. It's not just recall, but that they're actually actively doing something with their knowledge. So it allows us to sort of look at curriculum from that lens. It helps us to define our expectations around what learning is. What does understanding mean? So, and then we can bring those conversations back to the teachers. But maybe most important, it helps us sort of pinpoint how we can support the staff in their development and how we are all on the same page, basically.
Can I ask you another question before we move on?
Surely.
I'm just looking at your curriculum review cycle. So after 2024, what happens 2025? Do you say, let's take an assessment of all of what we've reviewed and then start the process all over again? I'm just curious as to how that continues.
Begin again.
Roll over. It just rolls
Yeah.
over immediately, or is it like we take a year to assess and then decide what we're going to do?
We begin again because in that review, you're going to be
ahead.
assessing what we did in the last review.
Gotcha.
And they may decide just in the review process not to do any
Correct.
changes,
Right.
but still
Right.
look at, kind of like you're saying, reflect on what we've
Exactly.
done and
What
how
worked
it's
and what
working.
Right.
But
Well, and
really,
also DESE might change their standards and just upend the whole thing, flip the tables. Start over, everybody.
but that's what, I mean, the thing with curriculum, having been, this is the work that I love that I don't get to really do anymore, but I mean.
You can come and join us.
In her copious spare time.
One of my favorite roles was director of curriculum, and the thing we need to get across to everyone is this is always fluid. It needs to be
Right.
changing and growing, because if it's not working, you don't stay in that moment.
Right.
You try to tweak things and move them.
Right. And I think the pandemic is a perfect example. Everybody had to do a huge shift, and we learned so much. Do we really want to get rid of everything that we've learned? Yeah, we're glad to be back in classrooms with kids, but there were some things that were actually really efficient. And that's just one example of why we need to keep doing these reviews.
May I ask you a question too? Because I'm curious. So Mr. Lavasser was here for the process of the strategic plan, although I don't know, did you actually participate?
I was not part of that
Okay.
committee, no.
So for the three of you, but especially for the two newest to campus, you already seem like an expert in what our strategic plan is, so congratulations on that, number one. Number
They
two,
live and breathe it every day.
So I'm
And they
curious,
model
all
it.
Joni.
They model it.
So I am curious, what do you think of our strategic plan, and, how do you come in somewhere and it's brand new to us, but also to you, how?
Yeah, actually, we had this conversation. I've been on strategic plan committees in other schools. I was very impressed with the thoroughness, the clarity. The presentation is top notch. It's pretty sharp. I do like the clarity of it, and the fact that I'm teaching graduate students and I'm making them do data searches, and I'm like, find the strategic plan at the school that you're doing your research, and they can't. I mean, that should tell you a lot about how, I've been totally impressed with how visible it is, how easily accessible it is, and that it's talked about, it's hanging in our classrooms, et cetera. So well done.
I like it in that I'm always a fan of clarity about where we're going and what the expectation is in terms of what we're trying to achieve down the line, and as sort of that roadmap. And I'm a big fan of visioning and mission statements at the beginning of a process. So I like that I'm at the beginning, it's done, and that's sort of our marching orders to work towards implementing those things. And I also, in terms of we talked before about curriculum alignment, is also the check that we, just as we develop a mission statement for them for math instruction and ELA instruction, we're always a choice we make then, does it align to this thing that we said we want to do, because that's our foundation. That's the check we always give ourselves in terms of the strategic plan, is are we actually doing that thing? And if we are, fantastic. But if it doesn't, then maybe we don't need to do that thing, right? We make sure that everybody's doing the same thing, the work towards achieving those goals, and that's helpful to have alignment in those ways.
I will say Joni and the three coordinators, and I think Dan as well, were working in the summer, even though that's not their normal work year. They came in the summer and did, I forget how many days, really digging into the plan and aligning all this work, and then there was a lot to digest, but I mean, they were becoming experts before the school year even started.
And you did a great job opening school with it, really.
I
we
think
spent
that was
lot
a
of
big
time.
thing we were hearing in the past, is that people weren't sure what the vision and mission was, and that shouldn't be the case. So people might be sick of it because I feel like we're constantly reminding them of how we're connecting this work to our PD, to our, to the.
In the
curriculum
PD
design,
agendas,
everything.
it's right there. What arch is it attached to? Which high-quality PD is attached to? Right, the day before school started, everything was attached to the arch.
I don't think you'll hear anyone say that they have no idea what our vision is.
Correct.
Ever again.
I really,
Came up with a survey, right?
I really just, the fact that you seem so comfortable with it is just like standing out to me. It is so impressive that you're,
Yeah.
you know, that you're so into it, so thank you.
We're fortunate that we have 3 great
And it's
people
just
here.
not theory. That's so important because we could write all the words that we want, but to know that it's being connected, it's so important and so thoughtful.
No, they hit the
Amazing
ground
job.
running. They hit the ground
And
running.
I can say just from my
Amazing
work,
job.
they're all very different individuals, but together what a team we have here because they're grounded in this work and like-minded and passionate about it, which is what we like to see. Right.
So this is one of our tools to help with transparency to our constituents, right? This is called Standards by Month. It's basically just a quick reference of what each course in the district is doing to address each standard, where in the school year they're being addressed. And it allows the public to sort of see that we actually create the curriculum based on these standards, and that you know, they can see what we're doing pretty much at any time from the website. And a shout out to Dan McLeod and Julie Marshall for basically training us how to even use the website. So we're still getting our feet under us, and you should be able to see some of these documents starting to come live after our training next week. So
Yeah, we're not going to wait until we have all the great.
Yeah.
Let's get going as we just put it up as you go.
because it's a huge task. So by the end of the year, you should see a plethora of documents.
So we just had last Monday at one of our meetings, Dr. Kuska attended and approved the template for how we're going to be pushing that out. It's great.
All right, let me get my slide here. So the tool that we're using to articulate curriculum is something called Understanding by Design. It's nothing new. This is not like a fly-by-night type of thing. It's been around since the 90s. And it's often called backward planning. Some people will just call it backward planning instead of Understanding by Design, or you'll all hear it as UBD as in short. What's innovative about it is that and honestly, it was the eureka moment when I just was like, why did I not know this in the beginning of my career? It would have made so many very sleepless nights go away. It's about envisioning what students are going to do to demonstrate their knowledge first. That's where you start, is like picturing what they're going to do and then chunking it backwards to the beginning of the process and making sure that they have all the tools to be able to fly independently. Understanding by Design is not new to the school. It's been here since 2013. There was a lot of training, particularly in the high school, around Understanding by Design, and there was substantial work already being done using this method. But just like everything, 2.0 version came along, and we are doing some additional trainings and bringing everybody up to speed again. And like we just said, curriculum's always being revised, so we have put most of these documents in Google Drive so that everybody who's teaching a particular course can actually see it and edit it and make comments, and when they're not in the same room, which is often, you know, time is an enemy to teachers, really. So being able to review something that we talked about and then put a comment in that someone can see immediately from their own living room is really, I think, a huge help when trying to get collaborative spirit around writing curriculum. But also, DESE, you know, requires us to have standardized templates and forms so that we can compare an apple to an apple. You know, without having these templates, it's very difficult to see everything that we need to see in order to see where the gaps are. So UVD actually has 3 stages. This year we're only focusing on stage 1, and that basically has 6 boxes. I always try and sell this to teachers. There's only 6 boxes, and for each unit though. So if you have a lot of units, then that's 6 boxes times how many units. But it's basically identifying the standards and talking about that transfer moment. What are the kids doing to demonstrate their knowledge? Enduring understandings and essential questions basically keep us grounded, like, why are we doing this work? What is the most essential things that teachers need in order to lead, as students leave the room? Like, what is absolutely essential, so that we keep it clear in our minds and we don't get stuck into details, right? And then knowledge and skills. So knowledge are just the facts that kids need in order to do the work, and skills are what do we need to teach them thinking processes in order to do the work. And just those 6 boxes really guide every single, once you have those 6 boxes, everything kind of flows easily. The second...
Can I jump in and ask one question? Because it's specific to this. So this is exactly what I was wondering, because I feel like when I look at standards, which I don't do often, but I have done, they're pretty prescriptive.
Yes.
So this has always been the big question for me, is where we as a school district, where you get to actually put your own stamp on what kids are doing and learning. And it strikes me that that's it right there. I mean, is that like a good takeaway? Because I've always wanted to understand this, and I never have.
So as a teacher and a team, everybody would buy into stage 1. You would make sure that you're addressing the standards that, that make sense and that are prescribed for that particular course or age group or whatever. And the buy-in is just, what is the overarching main point of what we're teaching? What skills and knowledge are essential? Like, every child taking this course, no matter what teacher they have, will have the same exact things. It's after that each teacher can have their own stamp. They can do it in a variety of ways. As long as we get to that stage 1, all of us have it secure, then we're good to go. And I think teachers love the autonomy. And to teach for 30 years, you absolutely need to change up the way you're doing things, and you need your passion to come through to students in order to inspire them, right? So we don't want to take that away from teachers. It's really stage 1 that grounds all of us, particularly who share a course, so that we're not just arbitrarily just changing the vocabulary list or the outcomes, right?
Okay.
So stage 1 is really, I think it's easier for us to sort of like look at things more globally and not get lost in the weeds, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. So stage 2 would focus on what assessments we would need to see in order to be sure that the students had basically met that transfer ideal. And that would be formative assessments, the things that we're looking at every day to see if students learned what we were teaching right that minute and that class period, but also the sort of summative assessments that are at the very end, when they're taking their bows, like what was actually accomplished.
Can I just ask one? Sure. Sorry to interrupt you. Is this another place where you would discuss like standards-based grading, for example?
Yeah, so the assessment piece of it, we talk about all different kinds of assessments. And I think that's a real opportunity. I'm really excited about getting to this point, because I think instructional practices, I love to discuss that, because in each of our disciplines, there's a lot of really, really amazing things coming out as far as how to get data on whether students have learned that day or that week or whatever. So that is definitely a place where, those conversations come in. And that would be, we'd be looking at that next year. Okay. And then stage 3 is really the lesson, all the links, the videos, and then just making sure we're differentiating for all our different students, and just identifying, as much as we can. And I always say to teachers, it's like the kitchen sink. You're just putting everything that you might need, and you want to know where it is in one place, right? And if somebody gets sick, we're not having, a heart attack because we're going to have to go and find all those links and all the books and all the things. So by having it all in one place on a live document, it really gives everybody peace of mind that we all know what we're doing, we all know how we're going to get there, we'll all have our own stamp on it, but this template really will help us be organized and thoughtful. This is actually a document that we created together. We were trying to anticipate people's anxiety and try and cut it off at the pass, right? So this is the actual form. What is in red is what we call the teacher's guide. It's just asking questions and providing examples for teachers who are like, yeah, I forget what transfer means again. Even though you just said that like a week ago, like I just want to make sure I'm doing this right. So we basically put those descriptors in red so that teachers would feel confident to just go and double check. What I do love about Google is that we established all these templates in separate folders, and teachers are all collaborating in these live documents, but they can put a question right off to the side, and I get a little notice in my email, and so they don't have to wait a week until I get back to their building to answer their questions. I can just answer it right there and provide whatever they need right there, and then if it's done, they can just get rid of that comment. It's actually, and it's really nice to sort of see the progression of our conversations across multiple people.
And that brings it over to me. So the last thing we're going to talk about, or last couple things, first about communication and transparency, and these ideas connect to the first arch, the second strategic initiative number 2. One of the things we're doing is we're establishing a district assessment calendar. The goal is to examine how often we are assessing our students and monitoring their progress with the right assessments and the right frequency. Sort of acknowledging that we both need to collect data so we know how our kids are doing and to adjust accordingly, but also we don't want to lose valuable instructional time where we actually get to teach our kids how to do things so that they do well, right? So we have to do both of those things, and there's a balance between the two of them. So in doing that, we're looking at which assessments are being used to ensure that every assessment that we're doing district-wide covers a specific purpose, that's collecting the right data that we can then develop action plans around, and that there isn't overlap. If we're doing 2 different assessments that collect data on the same thing, then we can be more efficient and potentially eliminate one of them. Furthermore, just as a point of reference, a new state law is going to affect on July 1st of 2023. That's going to require districts to conduct a universal screener for dyslexia for pre-K to third grade, at least twice a year. We're already there. We use the Dibble's 8th edition 3 times a year for students up to 5th grade. So we're already meeting those expectations, which makes me really excited because having a child that's dyslexic, the earlier we identify that, the more likely it is we can put some steps in place to make sure that they can learn to read and be on grade level. So I'm really happy about that. The second thing we're doing is we're updating our own website, the curriculum part of the website. We believe it's important to make sure that the community and families are able to access information clearly. This helps build transparency and trust. Part of the curriculum portion could eventually include, well, at least the standards by month, access to course level stage 1 documents, links to the program of study, resources for parents, so that people know what we're doing when we're doing it. I think that's important that information is out there for the community. And then lastly, on the slide, we are going to be developing some community newsletters that focuses on curriculum instruction. Our hope this year is to publish 4 editions. This is in addition to the already established central office newsletter or the school-based newsletters that are going out to parents, and this would focus on the work that we're doing and the things that we're accomplishing this year so that community feels knowledgeable of what's happening here in the schools. It's our biggest investment, right? So people want to know. And then lastly, one of the things that we're also working on is making sure that professional development in the district makes sense. And first, our own professional development is really, really important to make sure that we are doing our job well and we're serving the rest of the staff well. So we are taking a course together through Athena K-12 on curriculum leadership. We had our first meeting with them last week. It was amazing. We get to meet, it's a job-alike meeting where we get to meet with other curriculum coordinators in the area and workshop through processes and just support each other in doing the work that we do. We're also, us and Joni and I think Casey Conahan at the middle school are going to be taking a course through tech on coaching teachers. And we're also participating in a culturally responsive teaching workshop at Miller with Desi, with Jerry support. The other thing we're thinking a lot about is how do we support the development, professional development of our staff. We want to make sure we develop a sustainable model of professional development that's committed to the professional growth of everybody. So we are attending curriculum meetings very often with our people, and we're helping develop the teacher professional development that happens in each of the buildings, and making sure that it's aligned to the strategic initiatives and the strategic plan to make sure that we're doing the right things to support teachers in achieving that goal. Just as an example, at Miller, we identified that one of the things that we should be working on is writing. We've already brought in a consultant for our November 4th professional development. He worked with all the teachers on how to build more writing practice into their daily lessons. And teachers are already starting to implement those things. So it's really great to see us identify those needs and be responsive and making sure that we're then helping teachers in those areas. And lastly, we love data. Data is good for everybody in the right amount, in the right dose. It helps us know what we're doing well, where there's gaps, and where there's improvements to be made. And both qualitative and quantitative data is really important. And we're going to be working together to develop a process to look at data across the district so that we are looking at it well and making sure we're then making good choices to inform teaching and learning at all the different levels. That was a lot. And lastly, questions. Yes.
All right, thanks. So I actually have 3 questions. So thank you so much for doing this. You all seem awesome. We're so lucky to have you. This sounds great, like a lot of exciting stuff going on. I just want to tell you all that I am a math teacher of high school and college, so you have a tough audience here, especially you, Mr. Lavasser. So my first question is, it worries me that there doesn't seem to be a high school math teacher on the math curriculum review committee. Yeah.
Yep.
And that is a big red flag for me, just because some of I know there's a lot of sort of issues I've heard from the community about the high school math. And with things like AP enrollment, preparing for college, so many issues, that seems to be a real gap.
Yep, I'm familiar with those issues. We're trying to get someone to join. Some people are reluctant to, because of the time limit.
Yep.
And little kids and things like that, so we're having trouble getting someone to commit. We might actually get 2 people to kind of split it, just so we can get their point of view. But Ann Canone, the department leader, is working with me directly, and I'm meeting with her tomorrow to explain, to describe what happened in the first meeting and get her feedback. So there's support from people. It's just the time commitment that we're really trying to find a way around. So I'm confident we'll have at least 1, if not 2, that are kind of together.
Okay. And my second question, I feel like I've talked to you about this before, Joni, is I'm just a little bit worried about with the standards by month. So one of the things that I do a lot in my work as a teacher is I just had a meeting recently with the other pre-calc teachers. We usually do a unit on functions and limits ahead of time, but because of the pandemic and this and that, we decided we were going to do trigonometry first and blah, blah, blah. And it seems like that kind of flexibility, that thoughtful flexibility and timeline is actually sort of a feature of good teaching. And I'm worried that with standards by month, teachers will be too tied to having to stick to an arbitrary calendar. And there's changes that happen a lot. For example, you have 3 snow days in January, so you do a shorter unit before February vacation so you can get to the whole thing, and then you change it. It's not a negative thing to do that at all. And I'm worried that if parents are tied to this information, they will have things to complain about that they don't need to complain about. For example, you said my kid was going to learn about the Civil War in September, and they haven't yet. Who cares? They're going to learn about it in November. It's not a problem. They're still reaching the standards. It just seems unnecessary to restrict it to a timeline like that.
Yeah, so I think we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's why we're trying to put it into units like you're describing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we definitely know that as these stage 1 units come on, it will be it is more flexible. You're absolutely right. That unit may stretch out or be shortened or whatever. But this is basically a ballpark. And again, it's also a little bit of a challenge because in the high school, they have terms and they have three, you
Right,
know.
block
So
scheduling.
it is a little bit of a challenge. So we've been wrestling with that idea. But I think the tool itself is really meant to acquaint parents with the standards themselves, right? Maybe they won't go into that stage 1 document that looks a little dense and be scrolling through to find unit 6, but they can see specifically those standards right away, you know what I mean, that we're covering, and maybe it shifts. And what, you know, they're going to be also flexible. We're going to review them regularly as well, especially as these units come up, we'll probably adjust them. So
And there's also going to be a disclaimer that says, you know, please understand, it might be adjusted, right?
Yeah.
Right, so we fully understand that.
But if I decide to, let's say I'm an English teacher, if I decide to teach Catcher in the Rye earlier in the year than To Kill a Mockingbird, do I have to go into the document and the website and
That will be
update that?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
right, and specific to an ELI curriculum, a lot of the standards are, they're not tied to specific books.
Content-based, right?
Yeah, so like there is some fluidity there, and we recognize that, and yet being able to explain the causes of the Civil War might not happen at the end of October, it might be the beginning of the November, and we understand that there might be a little, that is not a perfect document, but our goal is also to try and let people know, like, these are things that we are doing over the course of a course, and it's also a check for us to make sure we're actually doing all the things, right? Like in doing this exercise, we can recognize, ooh, we're missing something here, and that's really important that we know that, and that we can then build in those opportunities to make sure we cover everything.
We think it's more important because I've had a lot of parents question me what we're teaching. So it's more important to get the information out there, what the standards are, right? And so I think we're going to have to make a disclaimer, you know, that it might shift a little bit, but the want is there. And that's why I said we will be doing a spring informational night about where the standards are, how you find them, why we're teaching what we're teaching. It's more parents asking me, like, we don't understand what you're teaching. So it's to kind of like support the teachers too, right? So they're not getting bombarded with as many questions. What are you teaching? Why, you know, when are you teaching it?
So wouldn't it make sense to say, like, this is what they're expected to know at the end of this course, and here's all the units? Then at the back, that sounds more like a back end for the teachers to have, you know, particularly if it's a new teacher, for them to have an understanding of the month by month, but somebody who's seasoned, as many of them are, may not need that. Does that make more sense? Like, I feel like you've got so much weeds to get into to say, this week of this month, we're teaching about.
And we're not trying to be that prescribed.
Right.
That's
That
the
would be-
point. We've got to be fluid. A couple of comments about just having done this work in the past. One of the things I've seen done improperly was that, and this happens sometimes in the younger level, we purchase, let's say, Reading Street or Envision Math, and then that becomes the curriculum. The resources should be the last thing that you add into the map. You start with the standards and how they flow, and then you look at what you have and what you need to teach that, and that's built in afterwards, right? So really getting the standards out to make sure that they are aware that this is what you're instructing on. The other piece I've noticed that when I started doing this work in the past, and I did have them start by doing it by month with teachers, and then I remember when we built common assessments, one of the teachers reached out to me and said, I didn't get to these standards, so can I not grade them on that in the common assessment? Okay, well, the other 6 teachers did get to that, so now we have an equity issue. So it's also about helping them to learn how to pace better. Do you know what I mean? So yes, there's going to be some fluidity there, and things might not be exactly what we think, but at the same token, we need to make sure that we are trying to have an equitable approach so that you don't have these kids, let's say, when they leave the elementary going into middle school, and you can say, oh, this group came from here. I used to hear that when I had schools. We had 8 primary schools going into 1 middle school in Weymouth, and I remember the teacher saying, I could tell which kids came from there, which kids from there. We don't have that problem per se, but you also want to make sure that they are getting exposed to
Teacher to teacher.
Yeah.
Do you have pacing guides that you use?
In math, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And my last question is, I'm just wondering, what will the teachers have to provide as far as deliverables? Like, are they going to be expected to submit lesson plans? Are they going to, like, to what degree will they have to contribute to, like, the drive, which is an awesome idea, to the docs? And what will their autonomy look like? But my real question is, how is this different from past years? So to be less veiled, like, how much is, like, is there a degree of you saying to the teachers, you got to submit this now, guys. Like, we're going to ask you to do X, Y, and Z now in addition to your regular teaching duties, and what kind of pushback have you been getting?
So I think, for me anyway, for math and science, especially middle school and high school, a lot of this work was started or mostly done, a lot of it. But the format is very different from school to school. So if we were to just publish what we currently have, first of all, it's not completely accurate because stuff has changed, the pandemic and everything. But also, it would be very confusing for parents because they look very different, and where the stuff is different. So how I'm starting those stage 1 documents is I'm taking stuff that's already done and copying and pasting, and then I'm going to go to the teachers, which I'm already in the process of doing, and saying, is this what you actually do, and how can we change this to reflect exactly what you're doing in the classroom?
I'm doing the same thing, taking some documents from where it was created in 2013 or whatever, but also I have access to their Google Classrooms. I'm able to go in and suggest some essential questions, and I can see the units. So I'm able to put a lot of things into those templates, and then that little comment section is really helpful for me too. It'll be like, all right, so I really couldn't figure out how to summarize what you're doing here. So I would highlight it and say, could you just, a couple sentences. So I think that there's a lot of those pieces already done. It's just a matter of us putting it in a format that's readable to everybody.
Yeah, and I think, I would not want to collect people's lesson plans. I don't know if that's very helpful or useful or good for a lot of people, but I think it's in terms of thinking about if there's a course, U.S. History 1, being taught, and it's being taught in the fall and the spring by 4 different teachers, when at the end of the day, when there's a grade on a kid's transcript that says they got to be in U.S. History 1, there should be some understanding of what that then means, because that's our one opportunity to communicate that. And I think having that broad overview is important. And it's I think that what we're trying to figure out is what is that broad overview that should be in that is helpful, without them going really deep into the weeds and creating too much, creating extra work for people that then doesn't really help us very much. Because me teaching about the Civil War and its causes is something we should all do, right? But I might have a different project or thing about that topic than James might or another teacher might, and that's good. That's where we get to be our own teacher too. That's really important. So it's somewhere in between those two things, trying to find out what is that perfect balance.
Do you have a lens of the vision of a graduate, and is that included in your work as well? And again, you weren't here for the beginning of that process. How does that sort of incorporate into your work as well?
Yeah, so one of the things, as we start with the math and the ELA curriculum, and my work with writing too, is that's one of the things that we're collecting, one of the pieces of data that we look at and make sure that we have, because whatever we do in the school should eventually lead to that thing. That's the final
Backward
DVD.
planning.
That's the final backward planning document, right? When our kids graduate, we want them to be this person, right? So yeah, we have to make sure that everything we do is aligning to that, especially with anything new that we start to develop has to be created with that in mind.
Yeah, and it goes back to that pre-K to 12 plus alignment. So as you know, Stacy, because I think you were on that group, that was done at the high school level, but it wasn't brought down to the other levels. And then of course the COVID came, right? So that work really got interrupted. So one of the things I had asked Nicole to do at the end of last year, I said, I really want you to work with the other principals, and how do we get this work now grounded back to the other level? So they are currently putting presentations. I think they may have already done them, or close to.
I think they've been to Miller.
So that they're going to be doing PD specific to those grade levels at each building. So we're excited about. So it's connecting all the dots, and as you know, that's also connected to NEASC, which is, I think it's profile of the graduate in NEASC, but it's the same concepts. And the team put it in different language, but it's the same concepts. And they don't end in high school. It starts at pre-K,
Right.
And in terms of NEASC, I haven't gone through those reviews in other schools twice. And leading one of them, one of the things they do ask for is your curriculum mapped in a common way? Right. That is one of the requirements. So.
Well, and DESI's requiring the district to be mapped in a common way.
Yeah, this will really help us with that work next year.
Yep.
I have a question about ELA in particular. You mentioned about clear writing expectations. I'm just wondering whether there's been some discussion on the impact, either negative or positive, on our one-to-one environment. and whether that has been, that now our students are all working on computers, whether that has been either helpful or perhaps hurtful in our writing in that process.
Yeah, so like right now, in terms of us doing that work, we've met once and we started to talk about like what we would want for a vision. We got halfway through my very large agenda that day, so we're going to be meeting again to sort of finish up that agenda. And then and the second half of that agenda is what are our next steps? Like what are the things that we want to do and to define those? One of the things that we are wrestling with, and I think this is both about ELA and other subjects, is that technology is great and wonderful, and we want to utilize that when it's the right thing to do, and also we don't want to forget that we're people and we have to interact with each other, and sometimes doing things in person with paper and pencil is also a good choice, and keeping both of those things in mind. I'm also thinking a lot about like what it means to be a good writer for our kids now, and like the challenge of education is always thinking about we have to get them ready to solve problems that we don't know or can even predict will exist in 10, 15 years, right? And like being a good writer is something that's always going to be important, but how that writing looks is going to change. So thinking about like how do we have our kids communicate clearly in a variety of ways. And there are some fundamentals that you can't get rid of. Like a clear explanation is always going to be important, but that might start to look very differently. And thinking about like can we do that with computers? When do we do it in person? When do we do it out loud? How do we listen to other people in their writing? Like it's all part of like what we could do, and that's like part of the exciting work to think about this coming year. But technology is wonderful and a curse, and we have to like, acknowledge that, and I will keep that in mind as we go forward with that work.
And the reason why I bring it up is that I have a sophomore in college, and I met with some professors while I was there, and where I had gone to school, and one of the comments that they had made, several of the professors had made, was that our students are not really learning how to write. They're not learning how to revise a paper and actually have supporting background data as to why they what their stance is and why it is. And they're trying to revert back to, okay, now we're going to bring out blue books, and we're doing all the big audible groans, but like that's how they're learning best right now. And this is the college level, and I think that's because they didn't get that in the previous years. And some of these students are like throughout COVID, where everything was all online. So I think they're having to do some remedial, but they're saying that's a huge difference. Is the quality and the ability for our students to actually write and revise they've struggled. So, and even these are kids that are in like good schools. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And closing those computers sometimes and do the active hands-on learning without having a Chromebook in front of you is a valuable thing. And I do think because of COVID, some people may have shifted too far, and we need to kind of teach some balance with that as well.
I was going to say that you'd probably get some really good feedback. I attended the evening with the guidance counselors at the middle school at the beginning of this year, and they got a lot of good feedback from parents about things related to teaching and learning. So I would just say to you, like, I think there's a good source of information for you. I would also welcome you to the PTO. Like, we're a really strong organization that really want to support teachers and students. So I think that's a big thing too. For example, we're going to do a readathon at the middle school. So I would love to have you join us for that conversation if you're interested, just to bring in like how do we tie it all together.
Minnie has Kit Kats. Do you guys want some?
That's your
I know. You didn't make it down. I was like, somebody pass it around the other way. You're still talking.
I had tiramisu earlier.
I will totally
Kit Kat any day.
While you're enjoying some candy, I have a question which I don't even know if it's related to this, but I'm really curious to ask, is that we have gotten away from pen and paper lately. It's a lot of computer writing. Is there anything in our curriculum that would bring the kids back to at least some aspect of writing on paper? I was just watching her write, and I'm thinking, 15 years down the line, I mean, would we have somebody doing that?
I used to teach penmanship, and you probably couldn't read my writing.
Yeah, I mean, penmanship, I'm not even thinking of that.
No, I know, I'm just thinking of how bad
Right,
it
I
was.
mean, that's not even, it's been so bad that we leave alone handwriting. We are not even having the kids write anything anymore. So is there anything that you guys are working on in regards to?
I mean, there definitely is research that taking pen to paper, and certainly with the OTPs with the penmanship, but beyond that, there is some research about having
Yes.
it physically in front of you, so I do think that's something we want to look into further. I haven't really personally delved into it too much. I don't know if you have had a chance yet.
We're both involved in curriculum reviews currently, and I'm sure that'll come up, and we'll take that into consideration, especially ELA, but also even math, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have like a different sort of take on it. I'm an absolute curriculum nerd. And the idea of transfer where you have to create something, where that's the assessment, is students have to take all kinds of knowledge, et cetera, and do something creative with it, is such a huge opportunity to get away from paper. And I feel like, by modeling it and helping to develop curriculum that way, where it becomes more project-based, and it's an authentic assessment, not a fill in the blank, not a recall. The idea of transfer is such a rich place for us, and I really think it'll help us get away from just writing. Like that seems to be our go-to, right? So for me, I'm optimistic that we can, by having these curricular conversations, we really can adjust some practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think in watching classes, I know that teachers, there's great moments where kids are able to do a piece of writing, for instance, on the computer, and the teacher, and having been in the position, I can give really fast feedback to the thing very quickly when they type it out. I can click between all 20 kids very quickly, give them the comments very fast, and they get that feedback that's actionable. There's something really great about that. And you can do shared documents. And there's some really great things in terms of productivity and sharing, collaborating that can come out of technology. And I've also seen teachers in classes within the past month, not use computers and do things like very tactile and hands-on, because the best way for the kids to collaborate and to talk with each other was not through that use, and that's really important that we do that as well. And I think since I've been in education, using technology has both been great, and you have to be, it's like, just because you're using it doesn't make your teaching any better. It can, but you have to use it in the right way. And we have some really great tech integration specialists that are really helpful in making sure that when we do use the technology, it's being used the best way possible, and how to teach it to kids to use it in the best way possible. And that's really exciting. One of the projects I'm working on right now with a teacher at Miller is at MassQ. I went to a presentation with Allie Curley, who's a tech person at Miller, and we're working with another fourth grade teacher. It was about podcasting, and just like this opportunity for kids to really think about taking those ideas of what it means to create and to make an argument or to present information that often gets written down, but now it's an opportunity for them to do something that's real and authentic and to publish it and to make it something that's really interactive, and they're learning how to use the technology and how to mix and how to record, but still they're really great ideas, and it's their voice, and it's
It's a perfect example of transfer.
Yeah,
right there.
in
It's
doing
project-based.
the same thing where they might write a short paragraph about, and we're doing it around in social studies around the most important city in the Northeast. It's one of the social studies standards in fourth grade is to look at the different regions. So taking that project-based inquiry activity, which could then end up in writing a paragraph, instead they're going to still do the same thinking, and they might even write a rough draft or a few sentences about that, but they're going to turn into a better product as a group with a really great introduction about why cities matter and why each city has what its benefits are, what's good about these cities, and then they draw their own conclusions at the end and work together to create this really cool product that shows their voice and their ability to collaborate with each other. So it's they will do things on paper and pencil, and they will do things with technology, and it'll just be this great way to engage them in learning that it's probably going to be their future, because so much stuff that we have to get them ready for is going to be both, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what we have to toggle between.
Exactly. I'm nowhere against at all about incorporating technology. Absolutely not.
Right.
It's just one part of development, which I strongly believe that it's still relevant. And I think that's what I was talking about when developmental, especially in the early years. Eventually they do, everybody is like collaborating on the computer. I don't even have a notepad.
I think you'll see, I mean, actually I was visiting some, I think I was in 5th grade classes today, and then I went to 1st grade. But the 5th graders, they were doing note-taking on a social studies lesson, and they had the maps, and the teacher they were pen and paper. I mean, you know, they would take pencils, but they were writing the notes right on there. So I agree with you, developmentally, I think you still want to have that
Correct.
work.
Because it's like all 5 senses work when you're putting the pen on the paper. It's like, it's something which...
But then thinking of my doctoral program at Northeastern about 5 years ago, I was collaborating through Google, it was Blackboard Connect, I think, but we were collaborating with, I had people, none of us were in the same state even, you know, I had people all over the world. It was challenging when we were doing group projects to connect with one another on different time zones, but that was the reality of the work that I was doing, and most of it was online. We only did 2 weeks on campus, so there's a lot of college taking place that way.
But I think what's disappointing is when your child says, Mom, I can't read what you wrote to me because it was in cursive, or, oh my goodness, you got a 20 on that math test because your writing is so bad that you couldn't even read your own numbers. That's, I think, where some of us are coming from in terms of the, you know, it would be nice if they could write it first before they do it online.
Because it kind of makes them a little bit of a handicap. If you take a computer away, you actually are looking at a child who's probably not be able to form a letter on the paper. Eventually, I'm not talking about now, but the way we are progressing, it might very well get there, right? So shut down the Wi-Fi and they're pretty much done. So I think it's important for them to have that basic understanding of pen and paper, and then of course, as they grow up, they're born with computers now.
Thank you very much. So much for all of your work and for your presentation. It's really exciting and informative, and I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, and just that streamlining throughout the district is something that we've needed for a while, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, come back.
We'll be back.
We'll be back, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I get to go to Pippin.
Well, you have to run it in.
There's a comedian that talks about how if Gen Xers and Boomers wanted to take over the world, all we would have to do is write in cursive and put checks in the mail, because nobody would be able to read them and know what we're talking about.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
That's so funny.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so moving on. Policy. We don't need to review the parental consent again, do we, or do we?
No, I think we're good. Well, I think if you can just email anything, if you noticed anything that I missed, just send me an email.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to hold on the wellness. We have some revisions, but we're still in process with that, and especially since there's some other updates. So we're going to hold on that one. We have DA.
Let's start with DA.
Yeah, we'll start with DA. You can bring that up.
Sure.
Is that yours, Amanda?
That is mine.
Okay. So I figure just have you guys read yours.
All right, ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Fiscal management goals, DA. The quantity and quality of learning programs are directly dependent on the effective, efficient management of allocated funds. It follows that achievement of the school district's purposes can be best achieved through excellent fiscal management. As the trustee of local, state, and federal funds allocated for use in public education, the Holliston School Committee will fulfill its responsibility to see that these funds are used wisely for achievement of the purposes to which they are allocated. Because of resource limitations, there is sometimes a temptation to operate so that fiscal concerns overshadow the educational program. Recognizing this, it is essential that the school district takes specific action to make sure education remains central and that fiscal matters are ancillary and contribute to the educational program. This concept will be incorporated into committee operations and into all aspects of school district management and operation. The school district's fiscal management is the committee's intent. 1, to engage in thorough advanced planning with staff and community involvement in order to develop budgets and to guide expenditures so as to achieve the greatest educational returns and the greatest contributions to the educational program in relation to dollars expended.
2, to establish levels of funding that will provide high-quality education for the students. 3, to use the best available techniques for budget development and management. 4, to provide timely and appropriate information to all staff with fiscal management responsibilities. 5, to establish maximum efficiency procedures for accounting, reporting, business purchasing and delivery, payroll, payment of vendors and contractors, and all other areas of fiscal management.
What does number 2 mean?
Does it mean to establish levels of funding, so to...
In order
It's more
to
like,
provide-
yes.
Right, to pursue a percentage
Funding.
increase on your budget to reach level services and also meet whatever needs and your goals and objectives as set.
Yeah, I read it as that
that's
to
what
make
It's
sure
about
we know that
advocacy
I
we
think
have
it's
the appropriate
advocating for the
levels.
funding, that's part of our job too.
So
right?
then I would say to advocate, because to me, that looks like,
To advocate for levels of funding, no.
To advocate and advocate. Because part of it is also.
establish.
We don't, that's really.
We don't get to establish it.
Town meeting
not-
has
yeah,
the
exactly.
final say.
So to
Advocate for.
To provide, that will provide, yeah.
Well, but we
In order to
also come together with priority needs and Dr. Kuska's recommendations, and that gets us to a percentage. So it's not just advocating for it, but it's also establishing what we need in order to meet level services and pursue our goals and objectives to advance education. So it's not just advocating for the funds, it's also establishing what we need. So how do we say that?
establishing our requirements, establishing our...
Well, how about to establish and advocate for levels of funding? Or
I don't know,
I
it
still
just-
think
it
that we
did-
do actually establish levels of funding when we say things like, we want to buy this particular curriculum and it's going to cost us $500,000. We prioritize it and we say this level of funding is what we need specifically for that reading program. So I think that we do establish the funding by saying this.
You want
Okay,
to
prioritize.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just-
Way to
I don't-
word that is to prioritize
I think it's the wrong word.
goals, objectives, and services. Something
Okay.
and advocate for.
Because I read it as you like come up with the pocket of money for that. That's the way I read it. Like it reads funky. I don't like it.
Okay. Can we just like highlight that one and come up with some, this is our first reading, so.
Yeah.
And I should backtrack a little bit because I'd said it, whatever, at one of the last meetings, but there's a whole bunch of fiscal policies that we're going over in the next few weeks, this one and then more in the next meeting. And these will all be based on recommendations from MASC that says we need to have these policies in place so that it covers us as a district, and most of it is codifying existing practice. So we can, go back and forth with language. I think that, Amanda, I think you looked at several other districts to see, as we do with most of our policies, to see what it is that they're using, as well as MASC's guidance policy. This one, I think, is largely MASC's guidance policy.
This
with a few
is largely
tweaks.
MASC, but
Yeah.
most towns were identical to
Yes,
this.
and that was what we found.
Almost is like a very, sort of a general policy that it's almost understood.
Again, it's just a cover. It's
that
a
this
cover.
is what school
Yeah, what we're
committees do.
doing. Mhm.
Yes.
But
So
yeah.
that people know that you are doing it.
But that doesn't mean that we can't add whatever we want
Right,
to. I just
absolutely.
wanted to
We can certainly make it
start that as a basis for the discussion. So do you want to just let's just highlight that one and we'll come back. Is there any other questions that people have specifically on the policy? Or you can always email us, email me and let me know if there's something.
I think you wanted me to change this to Holliston.
Yeah, all of the, where it says school district should say HPS or Holliston Public Schools. That's just a non-substantive. Okay. Do you want to move on to your next?
Sure.
Did you have those first two?
Yep, so the next one is DB, annual budget, and this is another one, again, that we didn't have, and we felt that we needed. The annual budget is designed to meet the needs of all students. Throughout the budget planning and approval process, the Holliston Public Schools, HPS, engages in planning with staff and community involvement in order to develop a budget that reflects the educational goals and objectives of HPS. The Holliston School Committee recognizes its responsibility for the fiscal stewardship of the town's resources. The operating budget for the school district is prepared and presented in compliance with state law. The superintendent will serve as budget officer, but they may delegate portions of this responsibility to members of their staff as they deem appropriate. The three general areas of responsibility for the superintendent as budget officer are budget preparation, budget presentation, and budget administration. The budget is developed in advance of the fiscal year. Annual budgets for HPS shall be developed with input from the school committee and shall reflect the priorities established in the strategic plan.
Any questions on that? Anybody from budget have a, I was going to say like that last.
It's so broad.
I know.
Yeah,
Yes, it
broad.
is. Yeah.
Quarrel with anything.
It's kind of like, yeah.
Again, I know.
Exactly, I'm like,
Both of these, I know, for sure.
It's a little master of the obvious, but it's just explaining more to the public as to like that this happens and how it happens.
And that there is a process.
Yes, and that there is a process. It's not just willy-nilly.
And the how it happens, where it says throughout the budget planning and approval process, engage in planning with staff. Is that how staff feeds up to the principals in their individual schools in order to develop principals' priority needs? And then the principals come and present, and you, I mean, how do you see throughout the budgeting planning and approval process we engage with staff? Like how?
So I would say if you're looking, for example, curriculum review will say we need to vet and get new resources. And staff would be involved in choosing those resources, and then the principal would put forward and they'd get a quote, and then it would come up to meeting the budget process. And then on a smaller scale, each principal has their own discretionary budget in the building, and staff know that they have to put together their list of needs for that year, and if it fits within the guidelines of what they can afford, then the principal orders those at the building level.
We should probably, did we have the cross-references on here too? On each one of them, I was thinking they should probably cross-reference with some of them with each other in particular.
So DA.
Yep. Anything else, Dawn?
The only other the only other thing I'm struggling with is the operating budget is prepared and presented and compliance. The superintendent serves as budget officer. Where's the budget? Where's the committee? Because ultimately, we as the budget subcommittee also are a part of that with between the presentations, the development, and the committee votes on the superintendent's recommendation. Nothing in here speaks to that. Should it? And I guess the question is, I'm kind of hanging it out there because there might be some other fiscal policy that's going to talk about that. And so I kind of want to hold that if there's something else. So I guess that's just we can always revisit it if after you've reviewed these policies there's nothing out there. Because I think it's a part of it.
Right.
I'm thinking it might be covered in the last paragraph, though, annual budgets may should be developed with input from the school committee.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that and how input from the school committee sort of covers that, but I understand your point about how if the budget subcommittee is referenced in another policy, it's kind of like, well, why didn't we mention here as part of, as just a procedural piece of information or a piece of procedural information.
But could it be, though, that, I don't know, is there any situation where there isn't a budget subcommittee on some school committee? Do you know what I'm saying?
There isn't. We're required to have it. That's the thing, is that there's other, so maybe cross-referencing it with that so that people understand that what our
So
responsibilities are.
we did discuss this, remember? We did discuss about how subcommittees are school committee at the end of the day.
Yes, we did, because you said
Right,
that. Yeah.
remember? So
Because we
we
actually
kind
were
of-
going to add budget to that, and then you were like, well, you can't act, and then we talked about how the budget
Right.
can't act on its own, it's the school committee that acts. So we
Right.
could include more to cover that if that's
But it's
what
under
people
that
want us to
umbrella.
do, but it is under that
It's an
umbrella.
umbrella, yeah, that's right.
I should add Holliston School Committee here, though, right?
Yeah.
Sure. We can mess with it a little bit more. Can you just highlight that paragraph so that it
Which
just
paragraph?
triggers
The
the
last
last one in particular? I do think it's probably referenced in one of the other ones that we haven't gotten to yet either, so.
And even developed instead of with input in collaboration with. Or
Yeah, okay.
something like that.
Yep.
Is developed in collaboration with and in
Instead of with
advance.
input from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, that's.
No,
I
not
think.
there.
Not there, underneath.
Second line
Developed
down.
with collaboration. Right.
I know, I said I wasn't really,
So maybe that's what's.
At the end,
Can I do it
second
actually?
paragraph,
Does it have to be
second
you?
line, see, develop with input, so instead of input,
With,
we put in with.
in collaboration
In
with-
collaboration
So-
with, yeah.
got it. Okay.
with the budget subcommittee?
No, with the Holliston School.
So
It's fine with the
input, so you
Holliston,
just, yeah, I think that's.
Collaborative with and input from, right?
I say we get rid of input.
Yeah.
Just say it's developed with us. That's it. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
We did talk a little bit about that, going like, what language would we use differently? I think with just makes sense. Collaboration is fine. Okay, cool. All right, we'll just circle back to that one. Okay, so authorized signatures, again, this is sort of just this is what we do. Authorized signatures, DGA, the chair of the Holliston School Committee, HSC, and the superintendent or designee who has been authorized by the Holliston School Committee will sign payrolls presented for approval. The municipal town treasurer, who also serves as the school department treasurer, signs all checks drawn against school department funds. No other signature is valid. Again, it's just codifying what we actually do right now so that other people don't think that other people could sign off on any of this.
Is it more than payroll?
This one's specifically about payroll.
Well,
Because we do have to sign it too.
it's only
Because the
titled-
chair has to sign it, and the chair of the school committee has to sign it, and the superintendent or Keith has to sign it.
I know, but the title says authorized signatures.
Yes,
As to payroll.
that's for pay, no, it's just authorized signature. Yeah, but this is all on financial. Anything financial has to be signed off by those three people.
Right, so my
essentially.
question is,
Yes.
shouldn't it say then, will sign payroll and other warrants presented for approval?
It's not what the policy, that's not what they, that's not what they said, specific to payroll.
Okay, well, if it's specific
Then
to
it should
payroll,
say
then it
payroll.
should say
Okay.
payroll, and that's all I'm saying, and again.
Because
Authorized payroll signature?
That's what I would, right, I would add something in the
Some of
title.
us need to go move to MASC and.
I know.
yeah,
it's-
because payment procedures, I mean, that was something.
Well, it says that treasurer signs all checks drawn against school department funds. So it's payroll for the upper one, but for the lower one, the treasurer has to sign off on it.
Right, so should it be authorized signature for fiscal expenditures or something?
This is just
Payroll
specific to
and
payroll,
other.
I think, though. 'Cause that, yes.
Can
we
you
sign
ask them about that? Because then I
Okay.
would just go back to
Yep, that's fine.
MASC and say, if this is specific to payroll, then it should be in the title.
Yep.
If it's not specific to payroll, then it should be, that title should be something more like,
Yep, but we can change the title if we want to.
Fiscal
It's
signatures.
just roughly
Just
what
the
they are.
second paragraph isn't just
Right.
payroll, right?
Yeah,
Are we all-
so this was, yeah, well, yep, I'll send it back and also ask Keith about it. We had talked about it, but then Keith has been out, so he wasn't at our last.
I'm just frustrated with MASC
I
because it's
understand.
like, come on.
Well, there's
Yep.
there's a lot of ones we find that are a little vague.
Yep.
Or
Need support.
Yes, yeah, right. This was one of them that I was like, do we really need to have this? And they said yes. I was like, okay. Okay, and then DI, which is fiscal accounting. Mindy, is this one yours? Okay.
So we are still in the process of doing it. Last time Keith was out, so we are still. So the superintendent will be ultimately responsible for receiving and properly accounting for all funds of the school district, maintaining effective internal controls so as to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of operations, adequate safeguarding of property, assurance of expenditures in accordance with programs under which revenues are received, and compliance with applicable laws and regulations. The accounting system used will conform with the Uniform Massachusetts Accounting System as well as sound accounting practices, providing for the appropriate separation of accounts, funds, and special monies. The school committee will receive periodic financial statements from the superintendent or designee showing the financial condition of the school district. The committee or the administration may request other financial statements as necessary.
I feel like, while it's clear that
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
I'm ultimately responsible, I almost feel it should say in conjunction with the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, because he is the
He
gatekeeper.
is, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So can we add that?
Well, who's the last sentence?
You may not like that, but okay.
The committee or the administration may request. What would be the last sentence?
I don't know.
Because you would, do we
We
really
thought
need
about that last
sentence?
sentence a lot, yes. And the reason we kept that in is because we want to put it in there that they're available on request. If we
Right.
want to say like, hey, actually, we
I
just
want
need to know how much
yeah.
we've spent
I need to know
on.
more about this.
No,
blah,
I
blah, blah.
agree with you, but or the administration. She's going to be asking Keith
that's
for anything
vague.
all the time. Do you see what I'm saying?
Who
You,
includes the administration?
I agree with, but like who's the
I think
committee
it
or
was
the
really that
administration?
you may, we talked about this because I had that question.
Yeah.
So I think it really is the committee may request other financial statements from administration as necessary.
Well, it says,
Yeah, because the
it says the
administration-
committee or the administration may request.
Does that mean
So-
central administration only, or is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm saying we would ask, right?
I
mean,
would
that's
think
just
that
kind
you
of-
would ask us for more information like you
Right,
have. Like
right.
Dawn, you were asking and making sure we get those monthly statements and
Right.
things like that.
Yes.
So
I
administration.
don't see that you would ask me and or Keith
Right.
to get that
Correct.
for you.
Maybe it was because we didn't have Keith as these up above where it says in conjunction with, it says, because it's solely to you. So it's more like the administration would be then Keith. I don't know.
The
It's fine.
committee may
You can just say the
request-
committee may request other financial
Right.
statements as necessary. Just take out administration.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I was suggesting,
Yep.
right.
Yeah,
That's
like,
fine.
Because you definitely are the right, but I'm like, well.
The way they had it written was even
Administration
wonkier
asks
than that. It was
Right,
weird. I don't
exactly.
know.
I'm like,
Yeah.
we would be asking, so I don't, yeah.
Who we would be
Right.
asking. Correct.
Okay.
Anything else? Does anybody have any other questions about it? Okay. We'll review over
This
again
is the
and go
nice
back.
part about Google that I can make live.
I know, look at that. Okay, and then the last one is about payment procedures, and we're not doing it because Keith was not able to attend our last meeting, and I had some questions for him about that one, so we're just going to hold it until the next meeting.
No, but you can
And-
make the changes
I'm
to
gonna
the,
take the
Yes, to the
reading
others
date
I
off
can.
this then.
you know, but the changes about like the school, like it says the school department.
Oh, yeah, those were changed in mine. I don't know why they're not on this one. This copy is not the same as my copy for some reason. Or I had it highlighted and we didn't
Maybe,
talk about
yeah,
it.
we-
Oh, you know what it is? I
we
had it
left it.
highlighted. You can see my notes.
Yeah.
But then Keith didn't come to our meeting.
we
But I
read
wanted to
it.
have it on here because he was supposed to be at the meeting, so we would have had it to read it, but we don't, so that's all.
I will write myself a note to forward both Dr. Cuska and yourself, Cynthia, policies that Landon recommended.
Oh, right,
that we
because
look at.
we had some discussion about
Right, I
some
will write that
grants.
down to
And you
do
were
that.
specifically going to a conference about grants, so we held that one.
Yes,
And we'll
yes.
discuss it next one because she got some updates on that. Okay.
All right.
All right, we're done. Thank you.
Updates?
Yes, superintendent updates.
I can't remember if I shared with you yet, but that, I know that you have met Michaela Campbell, who is now not only our former ambassador, but our Project 351 alumni employee with that program. I had applied for the Project 351 Celtics Playbook program, and we were accepted. So I'm putting together the team, and we'll be working with the Celtics and Michaela and Carolyn Casey. And what is going to happen is that we'll be looking for an educator from the high school to oversee it, and they would like 2 high school juniors, and they will get trained to be the trainers in the district, and then those students will, and I think they do that for 2 years, it's this year and next year, and then they will go down to middle school and train our students on all this equity work and diversity work about how to model for them scripts and programs, some of the work that you and I did at one of the conferences. And these kids are amazing. The public speaking that they gain, the confidence that they gain as they move up in the ranks. And I was so impressed with it, which is why we applied for this program. But only 6 districts were selected in the state. So I'll keep you in tune once I have more information about that and put the team together.
And their students spoke at MASC last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do amazing.
They do, yeah.
And then I'm just letting you know that we should have our community newsletter, our first quarterly for this year, out on Monday is our goal. We're working on that right now, and that will just through the central office. We had purchased more to send out, which we did last year, but now we've gotten accounts for the principals as well, so that they can do more rigorous
got one
newsletters
from
and things. So I
Jesse
guess you're
Conant.
starting to see them. Yep. And then Jariel and I met with the L&P Equity Audit Team, and I'll be sending out, I have to put together a lot of information and focus groups, so I'll be getting together some lists and timelines. You'll see information coming up, but we want to be really strategic about, there'll be 12 members on the community focus group, so very strategic about which groups and people, and having balance. We have a wide range out of those 12 people. And similarly, we'll have 12 students represented from high school and middle school. So stay tuned. You'll see those communications going out shortly as I put the list together. And Family Forum at Rams was last week, and a couple of you were able to attend. And it was well attended. I think we had 60+ people there, so I felt I was a little bit nervous as to what it was going to be looking like, because there were some people that, had a lot of questions, and I felt that the administration did a really nice job trying to calm the fears of people, and that we're all in this work together. So we're looking forward to doing some more of these type of presentations. The middle school also did some coffee hours, and I think that was a very good prelude to this. So you'll probably see some more family forums similar as things happen in the district, trying to be more proactive than reactive to situations.
Susan, you weren't there for the coffee talks.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Mr. Jordan and Mr. Conant did a really strong job of being clear, objective, non-emotional, non-defensive, very professional, really handled a very emotional situation really, really well.
Yeah, it was as what I had heard, they were very impressive there. I only saw them at the night event, but I'm very proud of the work that they're doing and leaning into difficult conversations.
Exactly.
Today, you and I attended our Influence 100 training, and it was a 2-hour training online, and that was one of the conversations we talked about, is not being bystanders, and how do we as central office leaders lead this work and lean into it and not shy away from it, because I can say that there have been times when I've been bystanders and try to be politically correct. But if we see something that's not right, we need to do something about it, and that's really what we're trying to teach our kids to do as well, and speak up.
And actually, I would be remiss if I didn't say it was Janet Morganelli who was there, Angela Gavin, and, forgive me, the SSA.
Tessa. And there were a lot of staff that attended just voluntarily, which was nice to see that support in the room as well.
But this was the morning, the coffee hours that they, I don't want to be remiss about
Thank you.
Not mentioning them.
We are currently seeking student rep. Actually, I just received 2 student reps that'll be attending our wellness meeting, so it'll be good to have them in that conversation, especially when we bring in this conversation with Landon as well.
Absolutely.
And Travis Ahern has sought, and I had forgotten to get back to him, but he's looking for a student rep to be on the Envisioning Holliston, or 2. I did put 1 or 2, depending on.
We'd like 2, please.
Yep. So I did seek out those names, so you should have some student reps on that work in the community as well.
Thank you.
We also, as of November 8th, the state made some changes to the student disciplinary laws on 37H and 3/4, and we received that information just as everybody else did, with no warning, and our lawyer's office were also shocked that no information was shared to superintendents or our legal counsels ahead of time. But we were able to get on top of that. Katie Minolt is our legal counsel that works with our Student Services Department, so we brought her, and she had done some training with us in the summer and September. So I reached out to her, and we were fortunate that she's not too far away, and she was able to come yesterday for our full admin meeting, and she put together templates for us with the new changes, and we are going to be on top of this and be consistent with how we manage those changes. But it was unfortunate that the state was remiss and just thrust this upon us, but fortunately we have some good legal connections that are helping us as well.
Dr. Kresko, what are some of the changes within?
It's really just a 37H and 3/4, and making sure that we're doing progressive discipline and what was the word? Alternative.
Yep.
So
restorative justice.
Before you can go to a suspension, making sure that you've documented that you've done every alternative before that, or if you chose not to, there's going to be a real justifiable reason. If you couldn't find something to do alternatively and went to suspension without anything in between, it's because it's a certain drastic reason, and you have to document that. So unfortunately, what it means is more paperwork for administration, which is it's a lot of work. That's the hard part of all of this. However, it is meant to be communicated, but I don't think educators were involved in this process.
It's very prescriptive.
I mean, 5-day suspension does nothing. It's just
well, I think that was the intention, is trying to ensure. We personally, if we have to suspend, I always say it should be in-school suspension whenever possible, because then they're getting their education needs met as well, right? So I think that is part of that is part of what I think they're trying to accomplish. However, it was just thrust upon us in a very unmindful way. What else? I want you to check out on the website. I've been working with Julie Marshall. She is our district webmaster now. You heard the curriculum people talking about how she's helping them, so that's something she's doing on top of her other job, her full-time job of data work. And if you look at the policy page, I put in a request to her to really clean up that page. It looks great right now, so take a look. She's organized it in the way I'd asked her to do so, and we have a list of things that she's going to be rolling out for us. So I'm hoping that the website becomes a better communication tool and a cleaner, so that people can search for things much more easily. And I think that's it for me.
That's it? Really?
I think so.
Come on, there's got to be something else.
Okay. Joni?
Yes, I have a few things to report on to continue on Dr. Kuska's. We are working with Julie Marshall, the four of us, on building out the standards by month and the stage 1 documents, as well as you will be seeing us updating the whole curriculum page in general. We'll also be adding some, I can't think of the word right now. There are DESE documents that basically says, by the end of this grade, you should expect your child to do that. We will be adding those up there too. So we'll be having a lot of changes, so be looking in the near future. Huge shout out to Miller. They're doing incredible work. The three people here, along with myself and Jeriel, are joining Miller, Mr. Keim, and his incredible group of teachers to really be vulnerable and look inside and see our biases and really recognize how we are, and then we're going to be able to figure out how we can teach our students more effectively culturally. So that is a very involved program. It's with a company called Adaptive X. It's a very good program, and it's sponsored by DESE, and that's free. So a huge shout out to them. We had a very successful professional development day. It was a full day, and it was jam-packed. And just to give you, this is not everything that happened, but to give you a very quick overview, at the district level, there was safety care training for a lot of different people. Nurses worked with Julie Marshall on really building out their website page. Parents worked with Jess Beatty on mindset and student impact and outcomes. They were very appreciative of having their own training. The Unified Arts staff worked with Ida Pappas and from Rams, Miller, and Placentino, and really looking at those UBD documents, being trained in understanding by design, because the Unified Arts teachers had not been trained before. Placentino and Miller, they brought an outside consultant. Joe had mentioned him, a gentleman by the name of Bill Atwood, and he did sessions on writing across the content areas, and staff was just thrilled with him. He applied examples to math, science, ELA, and teachers were raving about what he did. Cheryl Lassie worked with staff on PBIS training, and then Jenny Mann and Winnie Carey did structured literacy work at Placentino. At Rams, they did, they began their day by working on building community with Personal Local Global. And then they concentrated on literacy and writing with New England Base Camp and Casey Conahan. Some of their sessions were annotating for comprehension, test structures and comprehension, inquiry and feedback, and then they had time to process all of that and figure out how they would immediately use some of those strategies in their classroom this week. And finally, at the high school, they had an outside presenter for Vision of a Graduate, help them develop rubrics that here are the concepts of Vision of a Graduate, but how are you actually seeing that? What's the evidence the student's going to do to perform that? So they're working on that. Landon Callahan from Safe and Supportive Schools that you two met, and Susan and I were talking to a lot at the conference. He did a lot of work with Safe and Supportive Schools for the whole high school staff, but then he did additional work with the counselors and wellness. We also had a student talk about their experiences here, which is very well received. And then the high school worked in departments on developing of writing, their curriculum and writing process, or developing standards-based curriculum. We are very excited, and I won't spill the beans yet, but we are bringing in a very well-known speaker who's an author for our keynote speaker in January, and I'll inform you more about it. It is a committee that Dan McLeod and I are working with 3 curriculum specialists as well as all the tech integration specialists. We are bringing back what used to be known as PD Innovates, and I'm not going to spill the beans about the topic either because we have not shared it with our staff. But it's going to be very exciting, and staff will be leading all of those sessions. So it will be very engaging, and people are quite excited. So we hopefully will be putting out the request for proposals that they have this week or early next week.
And hopefully we'll be able to invite you to the keynote. if
Absolutely.
you're able to attend that.
Absolutely.
The opening event, right?
Yes. So sketching, what time did we say? 8:30? No.
8.
8.
8 to 9.
8 to 9. So put it on your calendar. I'm sorry?
What did you say?
Sorry.
RFPs, anything?
Oh, request for proposals.
No, she had a question about timing.
Oh, yes.
When is it?
January 27th. It's our full day professional development day.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
And then my question was, they do RFPs for what? For their own class?
No, for them to present.
Oh, okay.
So their
For
proposals
topics
to
that they-
present.
To make sure
Right.
it's all connected with the strategic plan.
Correct.
The initiative.
So everything will be tied to the strategic initiatives as well as DESI's high-quality PD requirements.
Great.
Really excited. People are very excited to bring that back. You guys got to experience it, but it was really well received. And then unfortunately, the pandemic forced it to go away for a few years, so.
Excellent.
So Keith's financial updates were attached here, so he had put that together for you, for your review. If you had any questions about it, I'll try to answer them.
Oh, normally
Really
he does
just
it. Normally he does a summary page.
Yeah, is there one at the bottom? I looked through the top part, but
No.
it is just, no, yeah.
We do know that he is not yet locked in oil.
Right.
Correct.
Because we had a budget subcommittee meeting.
And I was at the Accept Board meeting on, was it just yesterday?
It was.
It was
It
just
was.
yesterday.
Right.
And I asked them that same question, have you locked in? And people are not locking in. It's just such a weird time that people are hesitant.
Usually does it in like July. It's weird.
It's going up. I mean, it is a significant increase, so we had hoped.
Right.
We're still working on it. I would expect it to be soon.
Yeah. He is monitoring it closely, though.
So does anybody have any questions about that, or should we just wait until?
probably reach out to
Yeah, I'll reach out to
Yeah.
him directly.
If you
Do
review
any
it and you have a
numbers and-
specific question, we can reach out.
Yeah.
I don't have any notes from the other day because I had written.
No, I don't really have anything. We're still in the same, because before we did, I had another interview today. I was saying to Catherine at the start of the meeting, it's unusual that we're still interviewing this time of year, but we're doing our best to fill as many holes as possible. So I think we're in pretty good shape for our teaching staff right now. Still a few para positions open, but it just seems to be an ongoing plugging of holes.
How
Do you
many
have a ton
position-
of news? Sorry, go ahead.
How many positions do you have open right now? for
Oh,
teaching?
Keith and I were trying to count it up.
Oh, I
think-
wrote it down the other day.
I know, I think it
He
was
said,
three teachers, but I think I just filled one, so it might be 2 now. And then paras,
he said 9 to 11.
yes, but I think it's less than that, because he wasn't aware that we filled a couple of those, so I think we're at like
Alright.
6 or 7.
I was just gonna say, we had any like new substitute applicants after we raised the price?
So I actually have, that information hasn't gone public
Okay.
yet, so I've asked Lisa, she did put together a flyer for me that she was working on today, so my plan is to send that out in the community newsletter, and then I'm going to ask the town to publish it on their website
Just
as
let the
well.
applications roll
And
in.
let's hope for the best.
And maybe we could even post it on some of the social media pages.
Well, I did see it in the Raise
Yeah, we'll end
newsletter
up
about a few
It's in the
college
newsletter
students
for
coming
college
home.
students, yeah.
Yep, and we'll end up posting it on the, our Facebook page and things like that once I have the.
Wasn't there something on Facebook that came across with it too?
I read it in the newsletter somewhere.
It was in the
It was
newsletter.
written
in the
somewhere, but we
Raise
hadn't
newsletter.
put the flyer out yet, so I'm hoping that'll draw some attention.
Okay.
It's not just Holliston, everybody.
It's not.
No.
Okay. Reports from subcommittees. Communications.
We have a subcommittee meeting on December 6th, Tuesday, December 6th at 11 a.m. And we will be putting together a newsletter. So if anybody has requests or ideas for that newsletter, please email me sooner rather than later and give me some ideas, because we will want to put that together for to be approved at the December 15th meeting.
Okay. Policy.
We just have to set a meeting. We haven't done that yet.
Budget.
We have our next meeting on December 12th. We had a meeting this week on Tuesday. Did a budget update from Keith. We asked about the SOI. We haven't heard back yet. I think there's a to be determined December meeting date where they'll be able to provide additional information. There was a select board FinCom school committee meeting where the funding of full-day kindergarten was discussed, and the timeline on doing that, and a number of ideas. We're waiting. We again brought this up in budget. So budget really just heard about this past week on Tuesday, and there was a number of things that that Keith was looking into as well. And that's why our plan is to meet again on December 12th, and then be prepared to put that on as an agenda item in December after we've had more of an opportunity to go over the numbers with Keith. Am I missing? I mean, Susan, you attended that
Yeah, I
meeting
went
as well.
back onto the, because we had talked about in budget about the MSBA process, and it has at other times been in December, and then it was later during COVID. But I went on the website, I couldn't see any evidence of when they proposed to, I know that there were agendas, and it wasn't on any of the current agendas as well, so I don't know.
Okay. I did have a comment about that from the conference, though. I did go to a session where they talked about our SOIs and building projects, and the number one reason why you got invited into the process was about enrollment, if you were over-enrolled. So if you're expanding so much in your building that you can't house that many kids, that was the reason why people got invited to the process. That being said, I made a big plug for things like issues that we've had at the high school, the water table, mold, whatever, just because there was a guy that was there from the MSBA. And did speak with a education liaison about what our next steps would be, because this is our fourth time submitting, and what can we do to make our SOI more attractive, or what is it we're missing that we're not including, not necessarily attractive, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And so she said that she'd be willing to look over our SOI to see if there's something there, and then if we move forward with that, the other suggestion we got from the MSBA financial, I forget what the guy's name was right now, that we need to look at perhaps establishing a building committee now across the town. And that's something that we can start now, even if we're not in the process, and it just helps to get what we're doing out more to the community and get their involvement as we move closer to that, because we may be, but we need to have those structures kind of in place, or just to start the process, let's put it that way.
And what's also interesting, last year someone had reached out to me to ask if we wanted them to help us draft the SOI, and that would obviously be for a fee. So
Yes.
it's interesting that we're trying to get an SOI to approve that we can then do a feasibility study, which we pay for, but now people are actually paying for the planning for this, so it's weird. But we may end up having to go that route just because we're in a competitive market and we have to be able to get everything.
There just may be things that we're missing.
Pre-COVID, the executive director came here and did a tour with us. That's what stinks, is, it was like when the times were good, Jack McCarthy walked this building with us and gave us really good feedback.
We did get a, that Cynthia saw as well, that they've paused the accelerated repair program related to funding and expenses. So they have not paused the long-term
program,
but stay tuned.
Right. And it's because of cost overruns. So things that they thought that they went to town and got approval for like a $130 million project, and then because the construction costs have increased, they've had to go back or scale back or something. So they're just trying to, respond to those. And one of the ways to be able to make those projects, to get those projects through, is to, to pause on the accelerated repair program. So at least the town knows that that's off the table for us. Let's put it that way. Sorry, just wanted to include that.
Just want to piggyback on one thing Dawn said. So she was also talking about at our next budget subcommittee meeting, we're going to talk more about the proposal from the town on full day K, but I think we're going to get some inputs before that meeting to be able to talk about it more, but we're still going to need a lot more inputs in January before we can make a recommendation, just to clarify.
And are we having just the one meeting in December? Can I just clarify that too? Is it?
The December 15th.
We have the December 15th meeting. Okay. At one point there was discussion of whether we would have more than one. I just want to make sure we had planned our budget meeting appropriately.
Yeah, that's why we planned it for the 12th, so that you'd have any updates.
Okay, thanks guys.
And then in January we have two.
We start on our 2-a-month schedule, yes.
Because it's officially budget season in January.
Okay. Superintendent's evaluation.
I have no idea. Somebody's going to tell me what to do at some point, right?
I sent the draft goals to the three of you, I believe. Did I send to the
Yes, so Susan has sent us a draft and we went through it. They're like, it's still probably impossible. We don't have a meeting set up yet.
Yeah, we haven't set a meeting yet.
Who's the chair? That you?
Me.
There's a DESE rubric. You should look on DESE because it's a rubric that's.
Yeah, you should probably do that.
And I can probably download. When I downloaded it last year, not the rubric, but the actual template that you can do the evaluation in, it didn't format well in Google.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Is this a formative or a summative or?
This year's formative. Last year was summative.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no separate form for the formative though, but it
No,
does
it's the
say
same
that.
form.
Yeah.
It's just the difference in terms of our report, like how we have to do it differently. It's the same form.
So yeah, we probably will set up a meeting soon and go over the goals that she has done a really nice job of having the Arch 1, Arch 2, Arch 3. Like Susan has connected the goals with the arches, so we'll
Yeah, and it'd be great if we could vote on my goals so that, I'm working on them already, but if we could vote on them in December for formality-wise, that'd be great.
Okay, so then maybe we're going to want to meet in January to kick things off.
Did you say you want us to?
I think we need to formalize them in December. Because you're
She's
supposed to
talking
be
about the full
actively.
committee for the goals. The full committee votes on the goals.
Right,
But you're doing them now.
Well, the only issue, like this has happened with because I'm the chair on the accept board, we didn't get to vote on Donna's goals at this past meeting, so we're doing it in December. The only issue would be is if there was something else or different that you wanted me to work on. I've already lost half a year, but by January, so.
Right.
Well, but you're not asking the subcommittee to vote on your goals. You're asking
No, I'm
the
saying at the
committee.
December 15th meeting, if you could.
Yeah. So but I'm saying, so then after that, I think that what would make sense is have our first superintendent evaluation subcommittee meeting sometime in January, probably, right?
Okay, so I'll just share the draft out for the next, I'll have it on the next agenda then, how's that?
Yep.
And a vote we'll put on the
Right.
agenda.
And it's really usually just two. It's like a personal and professional goal, right? Because you're already following all the other goals of the district.
I did a little more than that. I think I did like 4 last year, but it's all stuff that I'm working on related to the strategic plan and tying and connecting all the dots. So I picked the things that make the most sense for, my role.
Just being a grammar Nazi, you do have a spelling mistake.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
That's why it's a draft.
Just to make But yeah, so is it something that you want me to share with everyone, or is this something we just do it with the?
No, you can share it with people. I just figured if you wanted to meet beforehand, that's why I was sharing it with the subcommittee, but if you want to just put it on the agenda for the next meeting, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're the owner, though, you can't share it, then she has to share it with us. Because she's the owner of it. so
Unless
she
you're
has
an
to share
editor.
with
I
us.
can't
You
remember how I
share
sent it. Yep.
Okay.
You can, but then it'll say, you have to ask permission from the owner, which is Susan.
So maybe we could have Lisa.
Yep.
I was thinking maybe we could just meet up real quick on, like, before the December 15th meeting, maybe just a Zoom, just to kind of put things together.
Sure.
Get a
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, who else is on? Who is Catherine? Are you? Okay.
That's
All right.
right. So maybe we could just kind of, have a little time and put things together.
Yeah. I'll
Just go
message
through.
you guys. I'll email you guys about that.
Sounds good. All right.
And he likes to have more meetings.
No.
That's. Okay, so we did have a school start times meeting. Keith was unfortunately not able to be there, so there's some information that we have been discussing that we couldn't today. But we made a plan and divided up tasks in terms of conversations and potentials and possible tweaks, and divide them up between us, and we'll attack them individually, and then whenever we're able to get back in a room with Keith again, we'll have some more answers and stuff, hopefully. And we don't have another meeting scheduled, excuse me, today yet, because today we didn't set one.
No, also we don't know when Keith would be available because he's out
Yeah, well,
sick, so we'll have to wait until he's back so that we can coordinate with him about the timings and then set another date.
Yes. Okay, so new business newsletter.
No newsletter this week.
No newsletter.
But definitely keep it on the December 15th.
Yes.
Agenda, because we will have one for that one.
And then be here, excuse me. We were asked by Tina Hine, you have this in your packets, to write a letter of support so that they could apply for the Safe Routes to School grant. Does everybody have that? Can you see it?
Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, could you read it, please?
Okay, sure. So the letter says...
Tina's here with us on Zoom.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, Tina. All right, so it says, on behalf of the Holliston School Committee and Holliston Public Schools, we strongly support the Holliston Select Board application for a competitive infrastructure grant offered through the Massachusetts Safe Routes to School, SRTS program. These projects will expand safe walking and biking routes for students in the elementary and middle schools, which align with our priorities in health and wellness. For several years, we have sought increased opportunities for our students to access more movement and outside time to boost their overall well-being as part of a school emotional curriculum, social emotional curriculum. The new sidewalks, ADA compliant ramps, and safety features proposed in Holliston applications will allow more children to access safe routes to their schools. We hope you support Holliston's application and look forward to our continued partnership. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Sincerely, Catherine Saward and Dr.
So this we've actually approved and signed at least once, if not twice.
Yes. So I think they just need another letter because they're applying again.
Yep. Does anyone have any questions? Because Catherine is canceling it.
No, it's okay.
Amanda?
So, Tina, I don't know if you can speak to this, or she's allowed to if we all know. Is this for like literally a grant for new sidewalks in a particular area, or a grant to cover like 10% of the town paying for new sidewalks in a particular area? Does that make sense?
Tina's answering you.
Tina,
Oh, I'm sorry. No. It's not you.
I think you have to unmute her.
I am. Okay, sorry.
yeah.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, this is Tina Hine from the Select Board. Thanks for letting me join you. This is 100% funded through Mass DOT. There's no town match, so we don't put up any of our own money for this. And it is for specific projects. We have 3 specific projects that we will submit for tomorrow's deadline. I can go over that in detail if you'd like, but yes, it's for a specific project. We will obviously only have one selected. They are actually only going to approve 5 projects, and there are, I think, 190 districts in Massachusetts that have partnered with Safe Routes to School. This will be a very competitive grant program.
Thank you for putting that together.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Need a motion?
Yep.
Okay.
Please.
I move in favor of the, how do we call it?
Letter of support.
To support.
Letter of support to Safe
The
Routes
letter
to School.
support for saving, no, it's not safe and supportive.
Safe Routes to Schools grant.
Safe Routes to School. Say that
Safe
5
Routes to
times
School.
fast. Seconded.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Stacy. All in favor?
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you, guys. Nice to know that we're not the only board that falls apart after 9 o'clock.
And we have candy.
We have candy. Next time you should.
The candy's a good idea. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you so
night.
much.
Thanks, Tina.
Good night.
All right. Any items of information? Anyone? Okay, our next meeting is December 15th, 2022. At this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss the contract negotiations with the non-union personnel from which we will not return.
Moved by Amanda?
Seconded by Stacy. Seconded by Stacy. Roll call vote. Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Sikorsky?
Yes.
Ms. Raffi?
Yes.
Ms. Stebbins?
Yes.
Ms. Bigler?
Yes.
Ms. Gupta?
Ms. Gupta.
And myself, Dr. Surratt, yes. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.